Hello, welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. I'm a retired U.S. Army officer and CEO founder of Cavness HR. At Cavness HR, we provide HR to companies with 490 fewer people by combining a tech platform with HR business partner. The Jason Cavness Experience is brought to you by Breeze Docs. Requests for proposals, also known as RFPs, can be very challenging for small and medium-sized business. Breeze Docs, the RFP response platform of choice for small businesses across America, uses AI to help companies quickly complete RFPs, security questionnaires, other important business documents. If you'd like to start winning more RFPs and reduce completion times up to 80%, visit breezedocs.ai to book a demo. And by mentioning the Jason Cavness Experience, you'll qualify for a free upgrade from Breeze Solo to Breeze AI, valued at $6,000. Also, the QR code you see on the screen will take you directly to the Breeze link so you can sign up. We're also brought to you by SmarterQ. As a small business owner, solopreneur, coach, or consultant, you know how vital social media is for building your brand, growing your audience, and attracting clients. By managing multiple platforms, creating fresh content regularly, and posting consistently can feel like a full-time job. Also, you can get a free 30-day trial with SmarterQ by going to the QR code also on the screen. Our guest today is Evan. Evan, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So how do you pronounce your first name?
Evan.
I mean your last name, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'll fuck it up already.
Poncelet. We don't go with the French one in the US.
Cool. So what do you do for fun?
Yeah, for fun, really, it's mostly just working with founders. I just love the creative process and seeing, what people are going to go all in on, and see all people working on all kinds of different ventures. And so I love to just support and hear what people are excited about and be excited with them.
So, we met. I think we met like a year ago, right?
Yep.
One thing that's amazing about the Seattle tech community is like you think you see everyone, right? And like, oh, do you know Evan? No, who is Evan, right? Or do you know who's Jason, right? So one criticism I have about Seattle, and tell me if you agree or disagree. There's a lot of good stuff on there. There's like Startup Haven, Seattle Tech Week, Founders Live, New Tech, what? But it's like everyone's in these silos, right? Like no one's really like goes like if you're a new tech Northwest or Brick Green, you're all in, but you're not doing nothing else, right? Why do you think there's like this lack of cross collaboration here?
Yeah, I think we're just kind of used to rowing our own canoes, and we bet on ourselves pretty frequently. And I think we're operating in a somewhat lower trust environment. People have their thing, their community they commit to, and then they don't broaden that out. They're kind of cliquish with it, but I don't think people even know that they're doing it. But I think, I'm seeing a lot more new people come to the city and kind of breaking our Seattle freeze here, which is really encouraging.
So speaking of Seattle freeze, I was talking about this later on, but you brought it up now. Do you think the Seattle culture here, like Seattle freeze, people being pissed aggressive, is actually like a negative for building startups here?
Yeah, I think it's part of it. There's a great book called The Rainforest. I think it's a guide to building the next Silicon Valley by Greg Horwitz and Victor Huang, which kind of covers this in depth. So it's like, okay, how does connectivity impact an ecosystem, venture ecosystem? And through connectivity, you get out of the problem of like single pinch points in a network, so you get a more connected graph. And so all the sort of economic transactions and social transactions and building trust can flow freely along a more connected graph. So I think that, people being siloed and having pinch points of communication definitely does impact it. But I think that, the work that I see a lot of great people doing, so like Venture Black, got to plug my nonprofit. We do big conferences to get folks meeting together, especially around inclusion in venture. But you see other great folks like Ascend Ventures, right? Kirby, Jen, and Nate over there. And then Pablo, Justice, and Christopher from 161 Ventures out from Miami, but they're out here doing amazing things, getting our ecosystem networked. So you see, people really starting to put these events together. We had the unfortunate pullout of Techstars in 2024, but since then I've really been seeing kind of that vacuum fill up and a lot more people looking at, the social aspect, especially with the revival of our Seattle Tech Week, Seattle AI Week, and these sorts of things that get, everybody out and talk to each other.
So with Seattle, I'm actually a host of Seattle Tech Week, right? And so I'm gonna get your advice, right? After I ask the question, give me an answer. I'm gonna tell you what I want to do, right? So if it was you, what would you do for Seattle Tech Week?
Yeah, for me, I think inclusion in venture is a huge thing. And so what I'd like to do is get all of the folks that are working in early stage investment together to look at founders from underrepresented backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, gender backgrounds, sexual persuasion backgrounds, to just get people looking at how to diversify it, so we can get out of this kind of pale male Yale kind of stereotypical startup founder scenario. Because building those relationships is harder to do if you don't have those sorts of people just offhand in your social environment. So if they're not in your family photos and things like that, then it's hard to build those relationships. So you got to go and look for them intentionally. And so I like to provide avenues for people to find those relationships in an organic setting over some, really cool things like, pitch competitions, or, really inspiring or informative keynote speeches and things like that. So my ideal event is one that really gets those like harder to find relationships moving.
Yeah, so my plan right now is like so I don't want to do a pitch competition. I think it'd be more than enough pitch competitions. I don't want to focus on AI, ever do AI. So my plan is like do like some kind of showcase demo where like 5 or 10 tech startups like show up the demo prototype. Yeah. Like, I mix up a robotic arm company, show up the robotic arm, right? Yeah. Like do that for a couple hours and have like judges judge the best one, give some kind of prize, and do some kind of keynote panel after that, right?
I love that. Because I think the exposition gets left out of so many big conferences. You see, the sponsors will get up and talk about their companies, right? And that's great. They already have revenue and all this stuff, so they're able to throw that around to get marketing. And then the keynote folks, those people are already out there and established. So it's like those people aren't the people that necessarily need the visibility, So getting the folks that are coming up in their startups, especially all the incredible expo stuff they do.
Yeah, I'm trying to get sponsors, but I'm purposely trying to get sponsors like people don't know, right? Like somebody like low level, like a brand new company or something like that, like. I mean, I don't think anyway Madrona would be a sponsor, right? They're too big, but like I don't know Madrona. I want something like smaller, so to speak, right?
Yeah. There's some exciting possibilities there. Yeah, there's the perennial favorites of the law firms.
I reached out to a couple of those that I know. Yeah. So quick plug: if you have to start tech startup, I'll be sending out the link pretty soon, so you can apply for this. So let's talk about someone who's like really dear near your heart. One of your mentors, your grandfather. Your grandfather had a big impact on Central District here. Can you talk about that?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So my grandfather, Holbrook Lawrence Garrett, he passed in 1987, but then I was born in 84, so we're just briefly overlapped there. But his legacy kind of stood with me my whole life. So he was one of the first Black credentialed professional electrical engineers in the country. And so he was kind of one of these League of Extraordinary Gentlemen type of folks who, for his some of his later engineering projects got as big as building electrode grids that would steer fish away from hydroelectric dams towards the fish ladders and things like that. And so there's some great publications on that. And so really I kind of grew up in the shadow of that, amazing work that he'd done. He was a lodge master for the Prince Hall Freemasons, which was a Black Freemason group out of the Scottish Rite, just in the Central District, right across from where the Walgreens is on 23rd and Jackson there. And then kind of as one of his last events in life, he was one of the founders of the Liberty Bank, which was the second Black-owned bank west of the Mississippi, here in our very own Central District of Seattle. And so my family, through my cousin and my uncle, who just had his 79th birthday, Omari Tahir Garrett and then Joaquin Garrett, they run a nonprofit called Africatown Community Land Trust, which is set up to preserve my grandfather's legacy in that his bank was really around providing home loans to Black families that were settled in the Central District. But as a result of redlining, this practice of not giving home loans to people that were in this government kind of mandated redlined district, people really starved for lending for their houses. So my grandfather's bank was to provide those sorts of loans to people that were the last to get hired, first to get fired out of Boeing. And so his legacy of financial inclusion so that people could develop assets really led me to kind of a modern iteration of that through the work I do with angel investing and working in venture capital, getting access to capital for people to get business equity as opposed to home equity. And so I was just always kind of living in the shadow, first through my engineering work. So I graduated with a computer science degree and an electrical engineering degree computer and electrical engineering degree from Gonzaga University, and then a master's in computer science from Seattle University. And so, working, knowing that my grandfather had done that, even though we just briefly overlapped in lifetimes, was just, affirmation that I could possibly do it too. And I think a lot of people, in order to project themselves into successful futures, if they lack that sort of like role model, even if it's just like somebody tangential to them that they're just seeing doing something excellent, it can, cause them to distract themselves with just kind of, pleasure and different things like that, and not really be able to defer, for this larger payoff of really having a fulfilling career. So because my grandfather did what he did, it enabled me to do everything that I'm doing.
So when your grandfather passed you when you were 3, and I definitely see a correlation with what you're doing, what your grandfather did. Did he leave like behind any journals or lessons learned or anything you could look back at, like, and
Yeah. I mean, well, the lessons learned, right, is really my family history, like seeing how, he worked as a man in community, seeing how important professional relationships were in terms of building trust, building professional organizations so that people that were able to function at certain levels of society were able to know each other and be de-siloed to really build together, as opposed to, like we were talking about, everybody rowing their own canoes. So really, his legacy of showing me how to organize was really important, and I think he instilled that in all of his children. They were all working in the civil rights era with like Black Panthers, Seattle Black Panthers, all these sorts of things. And so for me, seeing that, and then seeing also, like, so I'm not a father, but seeing how he raised my father and my uncles. I have my father and then 4 other uncles. One's passed, actually 2 are passed now. But my grandmother passed away trying to have a girl. And then my grandfather was left in this position of trying to raise 5 boys during the civil rights era as a guy that had, just made a career for himself against all odds, right, in a kind of white collar job. And so, teaching me how important relationships are, family relationships are, and to put that in perspective of whatever, aspirational career stuff I have. And then also in terms of like aspirational community work, to teach me, you've got to be involved in, family matters as well, and with your friend relationships and things like that. You can't just, leave it all on the table. And seeing kind of like, my grandfather made some choices there that were kind of regrettable. And so like seeing, not to do that was an important lesson that I learned just from the legacy he left.
is Liberty Bank still around or is closed down?
So Liberty Bank is now converted into an apartment building, and it has a founder museum dedicated to the co-founders of Liberty Bank on the first floor. And it houses, I think, 2 or 3 commercial properties. One is Avol Coffee, which Avol and Bunbun, if you've heard these coffee names, are parts of the Ethiopian coffee ritual, similar to how you have like a Japanese tea ritual. So we got an Ethiopian coffee ritual.
That's the one owned by Ephraim, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's been on the podcast before.
Oh yeah, love it.
I've always been meaning to like do his coffee ceremony. I just like, no, I need to do it.
There's a good one in the CD. Oh, gosh, I'll send you the link after this. And then, so those are in Earl's Barbershop, which has been a tenant on that block for a long time. And then the real kind of one of my favorite restaurants in town, Communion on Union, with Chef Christy Brown from That Brown Girl Cooks. She has an amazing menu. They're constantly in the running for the James Beard Award. I think they're rated number 2 by Condé Nast World Traveler magazine, but they've got like just the best textures and flavors at their restaurant. So those are all tenants of the commercial property there. But really, so Africatown got control of the basically leasing for that building in conjunction with Community Roots Housing, which has enabled essentially to kind of stem the tide. That's kind of a first marker point really in a little bit of the slowing of gentrification of the Central District, which back in the 1960s was something like 85% black. And today it sits around something like 7 or 8%. And so it's still where the majority of Seattle's like black population is, and like people that are new to the city don't really know about it. We're like kind of working to get the, marketing out, because people are coming, having their tech experiences, Microsoft, Google, everybody that's here, and then ultimately leaving to go back to the South. And so a lot of the work I'm doing, a lot of the work Africatown's doing, and a lot of the work kind of that community is doing is trying to show people we have an active community here, like, everything you could want in terms of community, or like, hair or beauty products and things like that, we, have for you here, and are trying to, make this a place that people really feel like the long-term future of their family.
So why do you think that is? The joke has always been Seattle's white out, all right. Right. Obviously they say the South, right, but I always hear like on the internet, like black people going to social media, like, where's the black community at, right? Well, there's actually a big, strong, vibrant black community here, right? So is that the fault of the person moving here, not taking effort to find the community? Is it a fault of like the people here not reaching out? Like,
it's both ways. I think that you can't be faulted for being a new person in an environment and not being able to find everything. But I think that, and recently, kind of in the millennial generation, I've been seeing a lot more platforms, and I think because the rise of the internet, now it's easier to find people. But I think that our marketing has been kind of like subject to the Seattle Freeze, and I think the core of the Seattle Freeze is you go out with the people that you're going to be out with. You don't meet new people when you're out. And so similar thing with community building, where it's like we send our event invites to our mailing list of people who have already gone to our events, right? But in terms of like the broader things, like being on a podcast or like doing all these sorts of things to get the word about really cool, community events or like different, meetup groups you have around different topic groups, like we could do a better job of that, all the Black organizations, around Seattle. And I think, we're seeing more of that come online. I think especially post-COVID, I'm seeing a lot of that, and that's, been really exciting. There's like a few great things coming up that I should plug as personal responsibility here. So we have our Venture Black main venture conference for Q2 coming up on May 17th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that's going to be at the Labor Temple, which is really cool. It used to be the old like union headquarters where you go to pick up your pay stub and get assigned labor jobs. They have like a bar down there too, so we got toast to Angel's Envy here for all the angel investors watching the podcast. But so they had a bar down there, so if you couldn't get a labor job that day, that you would stay there and pretend
do some day drinking.
Do some day drinking.
Like I'll just tell my wife I work today. They still don't know the difference. So I definitely want to talk about your event coming up. I have a quick story, right? So this is when I knew this is when I knew the Seattle Free is a good thing, right? So I moved there. I was in the military. Came in around 2009, right? And I read this article in the newspaper, right? I'm guessing it's true. Who knows, right? And so the story is like this family had just moved here from somewhere, and they joined a church, and the church said, we need volunteers to do something right. Okay, we're here 2 weeks. We went to a couple church service. We'll go on a Saturday, spend the day, and we make friends, right? So they spent a half a day cleaning some park up, talking like polite with people, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, it's like, there's like 10 of them, right? The other family's like, hey, we're going to go do this, right? And they're like, waiting to be invited, right? And they're never invited, right?
Right.
And like, it's okay, I understand Seattle Freeze right now, right? And it's important to like that, right?
It's like that, and I think that, we just have to be intentional about developing that culture.
Or maybe be more aggressive. You didn't invite me, I'm going to fucking show up anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing. Keep your elbows up. I think, for newcomers here, it's not that people, like, don't want you to come to their things. I think that people are open to these sorts of social interactions, but, yeah, just, be aggressive and be like, oh, who's driving? These kind of situations. But I think, also, like, being a host of events, you know what I mean? I think the power move really in community building is hosting events. College, you host, fraternal parties and different things like that, right? So it gets everything moving, increases relationships, everybody knows everybody's kids, everybody knows everybody's dogs and things like that. And, when you're in that sort of environment, it just kind of like breeds more, communal events and activity. And
so I host a lot of events in the Army and now as a civilian, like whatever I do. One hack I have, like, I always had like you do an event and like you don't know who's doing the event, right? You know who the speaker is. I always do. I do my best to go. Everyone's, hey, I'm Jason. Thanks for coming, right? What do you do, right? It takes some time, but that's my hack right there. Like try to like introduce yourself to everyone there.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. If you're an introvert, get that one fist punch, or the 1 inch punch of just that quick introduction, and don't be afraid, because everybody is more or less the same as you, right? Where they like to be more connected, but maybe they're a little awkward with it, and you'll do an extrovert's whole world, being in Seattle, because they're hankering for that.
I know, right? Yeah. Seattle's not the headquarters for extroverts, that's for sure. So you might not know the answer to this question, but I know Seattle's been around since 1850, 1860s. We're in Pioneer Square, the original neighborhood. There's a bar down the street called Central Saloon that's been around since 1892. Do you happen to know like how long the Central District has been around?
Yeah. So this Central District was founded actually by a guy, William Gross. And
Central is actually a neighborhood or it's a suburb? Like what actually is it?
It's a neighborhood, kind of like you say Madrona or First Level or something like this. And so the geographic bounds, I'm going to get this wrong and people are going to yell at me, but I think it's like the I-90 all the way up to, what is that going to be, Madison Valley, and then over to Madrona, and then First Hill. Like that box is the Central District. And then kind of the story of it is really cool. So a guy who was the ship steward for Commodore Perry's fleet, it was a naval expedition that forcibly opened up trade negotiations with Japan. There's some story, could be apocryphal, about him kind of saving or finding this expensive watch that like the governor that was on board one of the fleet missions had lost. And so he got a bunch of money and from that, and he decided to go west and really explore his fortune as a pioneer. Who, guy just went over to Japan in the 1860s on one of those what do you call it, the ironclad, ships with the big paddle wheels. So, he was an adventurous person, so he went west, and when he came out here, they were like, we can't let you into our, white man's industry of logging and coal, I think was the fashion at the time. And William Gross was like, well, but you need haircuts, right? And they're like, well, yeah, hypothetically, you use haircuts. It's like, you need a place to sleep, right? It's like, well, yeah, we all need a slumber. Everyone's going to get some trousers. Oh, you want food, don't you? It's like, yeah, we could use a restaurant around here. And so he built a place called Our Place. And so that led to him being, successful commercially. He bought 12 acres of land from Henry Esler, subdivided it for families that would also move west later for the first Great Migration out of the American Souths. And then, ultimately, in my grandfather's time, for people that were moving west as a part of the second Great Migration with the Boeing boom, which was like the majority employer over here.
It's always amazing me, like people nowadays, like, I can't travel to Japan. It's too far. It's too far, right? Are you kidding me? Like people back in the day, they used to travel much, right?
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Like no GPS. Like I can't imagine like going to Japan. Like this place even exists. What's going on here, right?
Yeah, I mean, people were doing that since before steamships, right? So it's like there's a great travel journalist, Ibn Battuta, from like the 1100s that went all over the world, and it's like. So people have been doing this before it's convenient, and now it's like more convenient than ever to just hop on a train, play an automobile, whatever, and go see some world. And with the power of the translation services that we have nowadays online, there's no excuse not to get out there. And most things are tailored towards English speakers anyway. So if you know some English, you can get around this.
Yeah. So I was in Vietnam for like 9 days, right? Of November to February. I had every intent to learn Vietnamese, right? These are basic phrases.
Yep.
But like I couldn't learn like people like 50 and above, they spoke no English, but pretty much everyone else spoke English, right? I would like try to learn Vietnamese, like, what are you doing, dude? Like, we want to speak English with you. Okay, I give up, right?
Yeah, it's always funny when you go to certain places that they are trying to learn English for business purposes, and you're trying to learn their language for like cultural purposes.
Yeah, exactly.
Or potentially business purposes. And so there's kind of this competition of, well, I need your English, and you need.
Yeah, it was crazy. I would talk to people, and like they were like, "My English is so bad." Are you kidding me? Like you speak way better than me. Like.
Yeah. Oh God. Could you imagine? And it's always funny when people come here and then like Native Americans or like what do you say? People born here are like, oh, speak English or whatever, and it's like that person just speaking 2 languages.
I know.
I grew up in a little like South Korean neighborhood in Tacoma, and learning Korean was a huge thing for me. So you spent some time in Korea. Yeah. I got to spend just a couple weeks out there, and I took a whole Korean language course in middle school. And to this day, reading Korean is like one of my favorite kind of cultural experiences. Go out there.
Do you have a favorite Korean dish?
Oh, geez. I'm going to say dwaeji bulgogi, like the spicy pork dish.
Okay.
And then I love me some kimbap, the
rolls
and things like this. So
nice. So how hard or how easy is it to become a VC person? You have to take some time to test. You have to PhD in economics. You have to like a lot of money. Like, how does that work?
So the VC thing, it ebbs and flows depending on what kind of the financial environment is like. So when we had zero interest rates, which was a huge boon because the company, people that could go and get money at really favorable interest rates, and then it incentivizes them to take more risks with capital. And so in a more risky capital environment, so most early stage companies, which is like kind of my investment target, will fail like 40% within the first 3 years and something like 70 to 80% within 7 years. And so it's a very risky asset class. You're essentially rolling, what is it going to be, like a 6-sided die or something like that. And if it lands on 1, then you get paid. Every other number, you get like maybe your money back or a loss, right? And so doing this in large volume of capital, if you hit that large multiplier, which, if you get 10x, like, sometimes, 20x, 100x, whatever, right? If you hit the thing that has the market, then it's a huge payday that justifies all of the other losses. And so the whole nut of VC, if you want to be VC, it's a 2-ended system. So one, you have to have the deal flow of companies that can go out there and get to billion-dollar valuations. So having like $200 million of annual recurring revenue within like the first like 5 to 7 years. That's typically like what these things are scaling to. 10 years is more common, and then 13 years and stuff like that. Those are the people that have succeeded a little bit more. But it's like, so you've got to be able to find companies that have that trajectory, so excellent teams, people with products that are, very well aligned in markets or creating new markets that people have never known before. Like
it seems like that's so subjective, right? Like, how do you determine a great founder? Market is growing. Like, how do you obviously you don't have a crystal ball, 8-ball. Like, how do you figure that out?
Oh, we have data. So there's a guy, a Stanford economist that studies the North American venture ecosystem. He has this thing called a unicorn report. And so he goes through and he has a research team that goes through and sees like, so all the people that founded companies that grew to unicorn status is what companies did they come out, or what schools did the founders come out of, what industries did they work in, or how much professional experience did they have in their relative industries, all these different things. So you can, if you wanted to, you could go back there and calculate that profitability. And so he's done that in his big unicorn report. I was watching his report out at the Angel Capital Association Summit. So that's accessible via PDF, and I'll send a link out to that. So, that's one part, and it is super subjective. But the main thing to do, especially in the early stages, is bet on the jockey and not specifically the horse, because a great team or a person that can convince a great group of people to work for them is likely to convince customers that they can fix their specific need, even if they aren't struck upon it with their initial idea out the gate. Someone that's truly great and dynamic in their thinking is going to be able to flex to point their sales in the direction where they
So this report, do you think this report might be a reason why people keep on like investing in the same type of people, like the stereotypical 3 white co-founders from Stanford, 24 years old, whose parents are rich, right?
Yeah, it does a little bit of that, but then it also shows some of the outliers and how you can't go straight down the middle like that. And I think that there is a strong bias to that, and I think that there is quite a bit of a herd mentality in VC. But kind of the fun thing about VC is that a contrarian hypothesis often is the right one. So the people that are identifying true market opportunities and putting down their capital on the larger bets, those oftentimes have the biggest payoff. So it's like, even though there's herd mentality, that the cost of being wrong is pretty high. So if you don't get that one that justifies them all to point out and be like, look, my picking is good, then you're out of the game. And so that's the real difficulty of it, is it really is kind of winner take all in that way. But I think that there's always the equilibrium. There's an opposing force to the going with the herd, and people that listen to that and have built the social capital to be able to do that and take those risky bets, they have outsized impact, and we see their products all over the world today.
So how do you decide like how much your fund would be, right? Like, I don't know what the amount is, but how do you decide it's 10 million, 100 million? Like, how do you come to that number, the fund thing you wanted?
Yeah. So typically it's around kind of what your expenses will be. So, if you're going to be a single operator, then that means you have to operate the other side of it too, which is investor relations. So convincing limited partners or high net worth individuals or institutional investors like state pension funds or college endowments or sovereign wealth funds to give you that money. You have to do that as well as find those companies that are preeminent and doing great work to invest in. So that's a lot. So now you got to think about your staff budget. So I want another person. Maybe they handle investor relations and I handle looking at the company. So typically managing partners doing investor relations, general partners doing finding and doing analyst work on the startups to invest in. And then you might be like, oh, well, we've got to get a funnel of this size to yield an investment that is going to generate a return potentially. So now you're like, well, I want to offload some of this analyst work. So you got another person on the payroll you got to do. And so, calculating back from that, now the way that VC funds typically make their money, there's a standard model that the Sand Hill Road folks generate for us, which is the 2 and 20 model. So you typically charge 2% management fee on assets under management on an annual basis, and then you take 20% of the carried interest, which is the return. If there's any profit on investment, you take 20%, and then the LPs get the 80%. And so that's how you get paid. And so working backwards from a sustainability perspective, so what's the 2% number? So if you're working off of a $10 million fund, that 2% could probably finance 2 operators within your fund. Maybe you could get a part-time analyst or something like that. Then you have all your platform services stuff. You've got to afford your accounting, you've got to afford whatever events you're going to try to source these startups or however you're going to manage your deal flow, and all these different expenses. So you've got to calculate all that to see, well, what's the minimum viable fund size for me, given my place in life and my responsibilities and other things I have to focus on. And that's how people start. And so typically you'll see people start off like $10 million is really kind of one of the minimum viable funds. But going out and taking a standing leap to $10 million is not feasible for everybody. They don't have like that great network, or they're not spinning out of a VC firm themselves. So if you're private individual, you're stepping off of a PM job at Microsoft for the last decade or whatever, and you want to go try your hand at being a VC, Typically, one, you have to have a network that can, write those checks into your fund. If you're
So you're saying this, your network is a bunch of Burger King fast food managers.
You might have a hard time. Crowdfunding might be a better option for you. So, but yeah, it's doable. And the thing to remember is that there, in addition to you being support infrastructure for early stage companies to get spun up, there's support infrastructure for early stage fund managers to get spun up in different ecosystems. And I think an important thing to do is for any given ecosystem is to be developing. I'm saying this as an emerging fund manager, but to be developing those early stage fund managers and getting them access to capital so that they can go and take those bets on behalf of you and your ecosystem as an LP.
How have you found these people, right? It was on your network. Are you doing like some kind of cold call sales networking thing with CRMs and connecting with people? Like, cause I'm guessing, like I said on podcasts before, like if you're a founder, you think it's hard, right? But as a VC fund trying to raise, I have to imagine your network of people to raise money has to be even very, very smaller.
Oh yeah, my minimum viable product, perhaps you tried it, it's called Trust Me Bro. So you have to, go out there and have some track record to show for yourself in terms of investing in these early stage companies. Like to prove that, you know what you're doing, that you can manage a fund, that you have some kind of professional or financial acumen to be able to do this sort of thing. So, it's not in everybody's wheelhouse, but what you can do is go out and there's a whole lot of venture conference events where LPs specifically are going to look for emerging fund managers. There's fund allocators that are specifically looking to solve this problem in ecosystems. Some ecosystems are very progressive. So, for example, New Mexico is trying to diversify its state wealth away from petroleum products. So it has a sovereign wealth fund that invests in emerging fund managers that then go on that have a thesis with some of the more established VC firms in their ecosystem. So it creates this really nice pipeline. And so, all these sorts of apparatuses exist. And so really the nut of it is, can you sustain yourself while you're finding all of these things? And so if you have, amount saved up, or if you take a, second mortgage on your house or what have you, you see people in all these different sorts of situations starting funds. And so where I started was through operating an angel syndicate. And so it's like pooled capital using a thing called an SPV, or a special purpose vehicle. So you go out and you find, people that are accredited investors. So that's one of these requirements for someone that wants to go out and be an investor in a fund or an angel investor themselves. They have to be an accredited investor. And so the SEC has this as a result of all the big stock market crash stuff that happened in '39, because people were selling snake oil to investors, and just without that foundation there financially, the country couldn't.
But whose fault is that? That's the investor's fault, right?
Yeah. So it is the investor's fault, but then the way that the SEC kind of stopped that was, so they created this regulation called the Securities Exchange Act of 1939, which has been amended several times. And so one of the amendments is that you have to make a certain income threshold. So for individuals that file singly, it's $200,000 a year for the last 2 years, with the ability to do so this year as well. If you're married, it's $300,000, or you can have a net worth of $1 million or more, excluding the value of your primary residence. So those people, the SEC has deemed like financially accountable or fit to do that. Now, people that are not accredited investors can also invest, but then on the person that's doing the fundraising side, they have to show greater reporting on the specific offer that they're making. And so oftentimes, and then they also have to assure themselves, like there's all kinds of different regulations around it, but they have to be reasonably assured that they've informed the person that's going to do the investing. And then the SEC also limits the number of unaccredited investors that can get into any specific deal. So we used these special purpose vehicles, wrangled a bunch of accredited investors, and created pitch competitions. And so my investor thesis is around underrepresented founders. So through our angel investing side, we invest primarily in Black founders in early stage. They only get 0.4% of all pre-seed capital out there.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna do a deep dive on that later on. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of stats that we're gonna go over. Yeah.
So we wrangle the investors too, and so on the investor side, you can be from any walk of life as long as you want to understand how to invest in early stage companies, or if you want to look at private equity as an asset class and understand more about how to due diligence a company.
So define underrepresented.
Yeah, underrepresented. So in venture, there's really large numbers. So not to get too much of the math, we're going to cover that a little bit later in the call. But essentially, like the pale male Yale crowd is like dominating hard in the paint, like in terms of allocation. So they get something like 70 to 80% of all venture capital that's out there. And so that leaves not very much for like the rest of the population to fit into in terms of like that 25% box. I think it might even be less than that. So people that just aren't kind of in that overcapitalized scenario. So another kind of little bit of interesting math behind this is that it's been shown that white male founders that can go out there and fundraise, it has no implication. It's not correlated with any success after the fundraise in terms of return on investment to investors. But folks that are like black, if they go out in there and are able to successfully raise capital, that has a strong indication that they're getting then return on investment.
Yeah, that's what I was crazy. All the stats show the more diverse your founders are. All the stats show all this, diversity, whatever you want to call it, like 20,000 times expands your investment, right? But yet nothing improves.
Yeah, because
it's fucking like, I don't know, it's like make it make sense, right?
Yeah, the hard part, and this gets to the core of kind of like what all the DEI controversy is today, is that there's been this thing going on, the good old boy network, right? And people want to talk about it in terms of being a meritocracy, but what we're actually seeing in practice, and this is kind of what the statistics show when we're saying that white male founders that raise doesn't have correlation specifically on their returns, is that those people are able to raise on hype and vaporware, and like we see this, like
Adam Newman.
What's
that lady's name who had the
Theranos?
Yeah.
And then you see like the FTX crypto Mt. stuff. So it's like those things, people were not taking the due diligence look that they needed to, and that plays out all over society. It's someone that's like, I see in you something in myself, in my lived experience that makes me trust you. And all of these investments are based off of trust, investments of time and talent and things.
Have you seen that meme where they did a meme where like Forbes magazine, like the next great founders like Theranos, Newman, all these great people supposedly, and that all got
wiped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't use Forbes to predict the next great person.
Right, and so the thing is, you actually have to look, and so what we're seeing is like the lower trust environment for the underrepresented folks that I'm talking about. So people actually look at those founders if they don't outright dismiss them. And so really that's what a lot of the DEI stuff is about, is, hey, maybe don't outright dismiss me for your son-in-law that may or may not have like the skill set you're looking for. Like your gut might be telling you to do something that's stupid financially, and if you're going to put a whole lot of work into due diligencing me, you should at least put that into due diligencing your son-in-law, or someone that you think identifies more with your lived experience. And that's just a human thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's homophily, or the idea of like people more naturally trusting people that are like them in some way. If you're a mom, you like moms. If you're a dad, you like that. All these sorts of things, right? But so we have all these racial barriers, and like I say, like the family photo thing, and it's like those are just things that we would want to overcome if we were going to take advantage of like the full range of our human capital, right? If we you wouldn't build an engine, like nowadays you probably wouldn't build an engine, but you wouldn't build an engine where only like 4 out of 6 cylinders fire, right?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want to build a society where only like 4 out of 6 of your best, brightest founders were able to get capital to grow businesses. And so in order to fix this sort of thing, we have to be intentionally breaking down those barriers. And the problem is just the capital is so concentrated up at the pale male Yale level, and even people that are not pale male Yale, people that are from underrepresented backgrounds that become fund allocators, they're so strongly coerced almost to go along with what they say, because if they take a contrarian hypothesis and they're wrong, the cost of that is so high because they're not able to build that relational capital. Like if they expend it, it's gone. There's not a chance of them getting it back, because it's like we already didn't believe in you, and so now that confirmed our hypothesis that you guys don't know what you're doing. And so if in order to break that capital stranglehold, we have to show how stark that contrast is. So California passed Senate Bill 54, which was it was a bit of a clumsy attempt, but it was an attempt to get everybody from California that was investing in startups or people that were raising capital from California to report the ethnic and gender breakdown of their founders.
I remember that, yeah. And
so that would have been some of the first data that self-reported data that we were reliably able to collect on this, to demonstrate how stark this contrast is. Everything else is kind of like combing pitch book, and I've even seen things where people use image processing to detect, is that a brown person, or is that what's their ethnic background? They try to infer that from using the Gen AI stuff we have now to do studies. But it's like if we can shine the spotlight on how stark the contrast is in the funding allocation landscape, so that people can assure themselves that in fact what we're saying in terms of underrepresented founders not getting the capital allocations that make sense is true. So once people can assure themselves of that, then you can be virtually certain that there is missed opportunity there. But in order to capitalize on that opportunity, you still have to break people's inherent trust in themselves, that the person that they think looks like them is going to be, at their level of success in the future. So they have to be moved out of the position to where they are ultimately, not just proximately, but ultimately the people that are making the funding decision through, peer pressure or herd mentality or things like that. So you really need to pool capital for allocators that are not specifically from these, overrepresented backgrounds or not proportionally to population represented backgrounds.
So how do you deal with this, right? I hope I asked this question correctly, right? So I believe that you can be underrepresented, overrepresented, right?
Yeah, this is true.
So like I'm a white male, but I'm a military vet over 50, right? Let's suppose, do you remember this guy named Junior Bridgman? He died recently. Former NBA basketball player. He died at 70, like almost $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
His kids are black. I guess his kids are black. I'm presuming, right? I don't know who he married, right? But underrepresented black, but I would have to say underrepresented all the money they have, right?
Right.
So in this scenario, like how would you decide who's underrepresented?
Yeah. So in that scenario, it's interesting, right? Because we're looking at, it's a generational phenomenon. So it's like that person might have experienced as a basketball player a single generation wealth transfer. And so if that happened to you, right, then that money is everything, right? You earned that in the highest, you put your body on the line for that capital.
So this guy, Junior Bridgman, he played Milwaukee Bucks. I'm making this up, but he had like a 12-year career. Let's say he's made like $10 million back in the 70s, right? He's coming to work with like $500 million now, right? Almost $1 billion, right?
Right.
So he like owns restaurants, fast food, all that kind of stuff, right? Just some context.
Yeah, and so once you've got that capital, like the decisions that you make with it might be different. You might not have a multi-generational wealth manager for your family or different things like this. So you're making slightly different financial calculations depending on your position in life. And so this comes down to like kind of a stochastic or like a probabilistic kind of look. Like if you have grown up with like many people in your network who might have had generational wealth transfers, then the chances of you encountering information about how to do that successfully is higher. But if you're the only person maybe in your social network growing up that has experienced that as a basketball player, then everything you're getting is based off of like trust you've built with other people in your network, which is slightly different than like, family or like being able to see things over a prolonged period of time of like, Larry's wealth manager has, quadrupled his finances over the last decade or whatever, right? So if you're coming through the basketball side of things, like a lot of those people end up broke at the end of their careers because they don't have this like financial literacy in their families, and they're like the first generation to do it and all the pressures to do it. So we're seeing more people get like proper wealth administration, but essentially, so that all plays into the larger calculus of like who's underrepresented. So in terms of allocators, like he would be, if he decided to allocate to specifically early stage venture or private equity as an asset class. I mean, so he has if he's doing franchise and stuff like that. But if he wanted to get involved in more risky ventures, like a couple stats behind that are it's only 3% of managing partners at VC firms are black, only 1% of angel investors are black. So he would be among kind of those lower statistics if he chose to do that. But then before even choosing to do that, there's all these barriers around just the generational trauma around money and the idea of losing it and what that would mean to your family, because the chances of another person having that sort of like wealth generation would be lower. And then there's a really sad statistic that really pinned this to being what I'm dedicating my future to, which is for, there's a great study that I think it was the Washington Post did, but I saw like a backup study because a venture capitalist I'm friends with wanted to just confirm this data, was that for African Americans, if we're born rich, we actually have a higher likelihood of becoming like destitute poor than we do of staying rich. So it's like in other populations, it's at least equidistant. So you have an equal percentage of staying rich as you do.
So do you think it's because in the black community, like when someone makes it big, like, I don't know, John Paul signs an NBA contract, he's expected to take care of everyone, right?
It's that. And the black tax is what people will call it. The other aspect is that, like, even if you make it, right, there are still systems of power in the U.S. that are, like, opposed to you making it. So we saw how people reacted to the Obama administration's 8 years, right? So we would say poorly in some regards.
Yeah.
But then it's like, that manifests all over society. So it's like, for example, like Deion Sanders, like his kid, like Prime, right? His kid was out there talking about he's from the streets and all this stuff. And Deion Sanders had to take him to task. He's like, you had a nanny. You were not from the corners.
Mike Irvin had to do the same thing. So I don't know, his son is like some kind of rapper. He's rapping like gun violence and, hoods and stuff. He's like, right. Dude, you grew up in a 30,000 square foot house.
Yeah.
And the kid doesn't know it was like 3,000 square feet. And Mike Irvin actually took a video and like, here, like my house, right? Does it look like 30,000 square feet to you, right?
Right. And so what is that, right? And that comes to like identity and this counterculture identity that people had to form in order to kind of harden themselves. And it's not like you're raised as like Gen Z, right? You've got broadband internet. If you're raised in, like one of these,
Like you probably can't even spell AOL.
right, you wouldn't know what the listening to the modem sounds, right, or the phone line was like. So, but here you are living in this high comfort environment, right? But you're still reacting to stimulus from like the Reagan administration, like push like against drugs and push of drugs into communities. So you're, thinking about Biggie and Tupac. You have never been contemporary with those people being alive, right? You're hearing derivatives of derivatives, and you're thinking that's glamour because those people were pushing kind of their idea of hood glamour, right? And using consignment within the chemical substance industry, right, to generate wealth, right? And so you're reacting to an echo from the past, even though in your current climate, you could just go start a venture, right? You could do, what a lot of these folks in Silicon Valley are doing. And, you have more access to college than anybody else before, right? So it's like if you're living in a metropolis, right, you have more access to these avenues for socioeconomic mobility. And they call this like learned helplessness. If you're still reacting to earlier stimuli, and one way people talk about this is like the elephant and the chain. They talk about an elephant that was raised with like a chain on its paw or whatever, going around in circles, and then once the chain is taken off, when it was freed, it still only limited itself to that kind of circle. So people are doing that over generations, and so that's part of this calculus of underrepresented as well, is you're reacting to things that happened to your people like back then. So when we talk about like perhaps like the Native American population is kind of the most dramatic kind of group to point this to, right? So like they've been in America longer than anybody else, so you would think, oh well, you've had access to the corridors of wealth and power longer than everybody else. But we know that there are all these like systematic things that have been put against their people, and so it's like the idea that they're even presented with the same opportunities that they're going to encounter in the same way is something that we can't think about. And so I think for people that aren't like in this specific situation, like the idea that certain people from these backgrounds are going to like turn on a dime and be able to take advantage of these opportunities, it's going to take a few generations of people really learning, oh, that chain isn't on my hand anymore, on my family's hand anymore, or anything like this, and learning, oh, this too is for me. I had the exceptional luck of my grandfather having, pushed aside all circumstances. At my grandfather's graduation, my father has this memory of, graduating from prestigious engineering university, Ames, Iowa, right, where Dr. Carver, the peanut chemist who did a lot of dyes and different things like that as well. So I think they were contemporary there when my grandfather was getting his engineering degree. They let him into that school because they wanted to prove that the Negro mind could handle that information. It was a science experiment, and he aced it, right? So he was just an exceptional individual. But then at his graduation, like somebody held his ears forward and was like, "Look at the monkey graduating." So my dad was like, "That will never be me." And so that instilled in my father and his brothers the need to be a part of the Civil Rights Act or Civil Rights era, so that they could change the consciousness around like how it was acceptable to treat people that weren't from like the white background. And so here we are, right, in the year 2025 as the beneficiary of like all of that work to normalize having a different lived experience just from ethnic or race or gender backgrounds, right? And we're still seeing echoes from that past, and in what we see current politics and different things like that. So we're gonna be able to overcome it, I think, because it's like you wouldn't see such extreme reactions if it wasn't a reaction to progress, And I think the pendulum's swinging in one way, it'll swing back the other way. But I think this access to capital problem is a big one. So we saw the Edward Bloom group attack was affirmative action in the Ivy Leagues, and then that same legal group, their immediate next step was a lawsuit against the Fearless Fund that was giving grants to black women, specifically owned businesses, and the legal allegations were on the side of it's a violation, I think, of the Civil Rights Act, which was an equal opportunity.
So with that, I'll probably get slammed for this, but when I think they messed up, I could be wrong. I think they said it's only for black people. They should have said it's for black people, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't say it's discrimination. Even if it's white people, still discrimination, I think, right? They should have said preferably black people. And what they should have done, or what I would have done, I would have said, hey, it's preferably black people.
Right.
Every person that apply, you don't meet the qualifications.
Right. Well, I mean, that's one way to do it. I mean, but I think that this is a bigger thing, right? So when you have like the big number of disparities that we have in society, and then you can't make targeted solutions, the chances of you solving like the crisis of that disparity are lower.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like to your point, right? So you could say, oh no, we only put out fires of houses that are on fire, right? But
I said, yeah, I've heard that scenario before, that analogy before, yeah.
and so it's just like, well, but there are minor fires, there are bigger fires, and everybody needs access to the firefighting.
And my thing too, like, why are you using your resources to go after these people, right? If you're trying to fix something, right?
And that's the
that.
thing.
And I agree, that's kind of fucked up.
But and this is mysterious, right? And so James Baldwin had his great thesis of like, I am not your Negro, right? So it's like, if you need to go out there and treat someone this way, you got to ask yourself why. Why do you need that, right?
Like, did like some white person apply to get funding and they told them no, and then they went to this organization and said, hey, I didn't get funding because I'm white?
Right. I mean, but at the same time, it's like, if you are in that situation, everybody gets no's. Like, that's just a part of the deal. But if you then use that no to like commit yourself to causing other people not to get access, that's a weird thing. When you could spend that same time doing what everybody else does and doing that grind of trying to get the yes,
Yeah. So everyone talks about, trying to fix the gap between rich and poor, different races, diversity. But I'll take on this, right? I think there's a big gap between like rural and urban, right? I think even if you're central district, kind of poor, no advantage, I think you have a better chance of doing something in your life or raising funds. You're like in bumfuck Mississippi, right?
Oh, this is 100% true.
So how do we give opportunity people in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah. I was just over at the Angel Capital Association Summit in Denver. It's like closer to Boulder though, and they had a bunch of folks in their ecosystem, and what they were saying is you got to do strategic allocations to the people that are in the middle of the sticks. And I just recently came back from a decade in the Bay Area, and what they did when they were developing the high-speed rail was they're like, no, it needs to go through the Central Valley, right, where none of the action is, because if it doesn't, then those folks will just be left out of prosperity forevermore. And so as a part of the condition of getting the capital to do it as a state, the Central Valley had to be the first tracks that were laid. And so you've got to look at it from that standpoint, is if you want everybody to come along, the priority needs to be the people that are left behind, to the greatest extent.
And then, even people in Seattle, no one who knows how to pitch, is always stuff going on. Right. If you're you're Sally Mae, small town Arkansas, you have this great idea, you know how to fundraise, you have no idea what's going on. What hope does this person really have, right? And she might have an idea to cure cancer or whatever, it's like.
Yeah. Someone said it was like the crime of our era is the fact that someone with Einstein's intellect is out there worried about where they're going to get water today.
Yeah.
And so it's if we're not fully engaging our human capital or doing our full propers on developing, was it the Human Development Index, right, for populations even in these rural communities, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, right? And people need to. I think this is a part of just a flaw of the human mindset where it's oh, there's limited opportunity. We need to consolidate for ourselves our little fraction. But the idea is you need to grow a bigger pie, right? Even if you have to struggle for a limited percentage, right? Make sure that the pie is bigger, and then a little piece of a big pie is a lot better than a huge piece of nothing. You know what I mean? So if you're trying to keep the thing small and you're fighting for your stake, and no Sally in Arkansas can have it, then you're ruining your future as well, because it's even if you don't know it, and this is another great kind of liberatory economics or liberatory justice thing, is your freedom is bound to Sally's freedom, right? Your future opportunities are bound to her. So if she's suffering, you're not well. And you need, people think about things in terms of short-term calculation, but the more okay you are with having suffering and the more okay you are with not having access to things like that, then that means, one, you or some generation of your family is probably going to be put in that scenario, right? You can't eternally consolidate. You can be on the in-group for a little while, but not forever. And so if you create conditions where the middle path is acceptable and respects humans' ingenuity, then you've maximized your collective resources. We're all these individual processing units that, sorry AI if you're listening, but it's I think that we have access to the convergence of so many parts of the world, and those accesses and the information that we get and store and our interests and our curiosity are so valuable that the idea that we're going to throw away bits of our processing power, bits of our perspective, because Sally Mae is in Arkansas and too bad for her, she should have been born somewhere else, or this person's skin.
Well, luck plays a part, right? Yeah. Unfortunately.
I mean, and that's part of it. But I think we just need to do better. I was talking to a young man who had a startup today, and he was looking at travel grants. So if you're hosting a big conference, put together some money for people that wouldn't be able to make it if they didn't have resource or access to be able to go, as a part of your sponsorship raising, to try to promote some of this people coming from other ecosystems and talk to these local chambers of commerces or economic development groups to see, hey, are there anybody from your ecosystem that might come out? So, plug to the Karl Maxey Center in Spokane, talking to the WTI, the Washington State Technology Industry Alliance, about doing events over there and looking at, okay, well, how do we bring, Black community into some of the venture events and get people looking at it? I was talking to the Evergreen Bioscience Incubator, I think, hopefully I got their name right, but they're trying to do work there in Spokane as well. And so Spokane has like a much dramatically lower African American population, but these like clusters of African American population could potentially be integrated into this venture ecosystem by just doing this dot connecting. And so being intentional about your dot connecting and reducing barriers is another way to kind of get this.
And like, how do we help people overcome like for better term, the parents, right? So you know what TAF is, right?
Yeah, technology. Actually.
So maybe 4 or 5 years ago, me and my fraternity did a pitch competition, right? This young lady, 8th grade, right? Her idea is like take phones and use your electric charger to charge the phone, right? Like, oh shit. She laid out the science, everything, like this might actually fucking work. Like, goddamn. 2 weeks later, she stopped coming because her parents broke up or some personal stuff, right? And then a friend of mine, David Robichar, right? He has a company called Black Muse. So he does a pitch concert every quarter. He's like big AR, VR guy.
Yeah, I've seen the pitch.
Yeah, and so this lady, not a lady, actually a lady, she's an 8th grader, 8th, 7th grade, name's Lucia, right? I was just the first pitch conference, right? She was drawing like designs and NFTs, the metaverse, and actually making it, right, in real life, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, shit. Her mother was like, you can't do this no more until you make A's. Right. I'm like, what are you doing, right? Like, it's like, and me and Dad was so frustrated. Like, this young lady has this $1 billion idea. She's so talented. Like, she does stuff with that because she can't make A some bullshit history class, right? What is like, it's like
her cursive scores are not high.
Yeah, it's like it's like nothing you do, right? Because it's, I don't know, right? It's just so frustrating sometimes.
But that goes to when we talk about the generational inertia of all the weird like racism and economic and borrowing stuff we experience, right? What we see is people that even have like a little bit of wealth amongst their family, what they don't have is the opportunity to take risks, right? Mm-hmm. And what we know about venture is, as I mentioned from the stats earlier, it's a risky proposition. So it's like, no, you're not betting the farm. I don't care how brilliant you are. I don't care. Like, no, you can't have your Yale tuition because that would be all that we have or whatever. Now people are building more like access to capital even on the educational stuff or general pipelines to socioeconomic advancement. But like one of the greatest gifts anybody if you're listening of means, one of the greatest gifts you can give anybody is the chance to fail, because the lessons you learn from failing are what make the difference the next go. And the people that are given that ability to fail are the people ultimately that are successful, because we know that the pathway to success is a windy road and sometimes encounters failure.
You know who Mr. Beast is, right?
Mr. Beast, yes.
Have you heard his story?
I haven't.
So he started YouTube like 11, 12 years old, making no money, right? Wasn't good in school. He has a single parent mother, military, right? Really had no money. And, shit like really risk averse. Like, you going to school, I don't care. Fuck this YouTube shit, you going to school, right? And so they can only afford like a junior college, right? And so like, man, he went to class one day, like, man, this is some boring ass shit, right? I can read a book myself, right? I'm going all on YouTube. So what he did for the semester, right? He never went to school, right? He just went all into YouTube. And like, man, when I tell my mother I'm not going to school, it's how to pay, right? Yeah. So 3 days before grade came out, someone paid him like $25,000. Like, and then he like moved out. Mom, I lied to you. I'm sorry, but YouTube's all in, and now he's like, but like he went all in, right? Yeah, and some people are scared to go all in,
Yeah, I mean, well, because that's like the survivorship bias, right? It's like Henry Cavill, and he's like, oh, your problem's talking to girl. I find that just going up and striking up a conversation works. So different people have different circumstances, and so Mr. Beast got lucky with that, right? And it's like, even then, like,
and I think he said when he got the $20,000, I think he started like YouTube at like 11 years old. This like he's now 19, 8 years and no money, right? Yeah. But like over and over, like he had friends, like videos, improving me doing he did one live stream. He counted like 1 trillion or some crazy number, like trying to 1 billion. Like all he did was like just like 1, 2, 3, 4, all the experience, right? And then like finally something clicked, and then like yeah,
time in the market is better than timing the market. And this is all things, right? So if you have the ability to stick with your passion thing to see if you can align that with your ability to generate income, then you can proceed that path. And like a lot of times these all-in bets don't work for people, and what we hear about in the media is the ones that do work for people. But that being said, like I love what Jim Carrey said. He spoke at a commencement one. He was talking about his dad. He was like, "If you think I'm funny, you should have met my dad. My dad was a hilarious Canadian guy." But couldn't talk him into doing a comedy career because he was like, if I fail, the stakes are too high, you and your family. And so he started a cleaning business. But then the cleaning business went under because I think some shenanigans or something that he was working with. And so Jim learned from that lesson that Mr. Carey learned from that lesson, you can fail at something you don't want to do. So why not try at the thing you do want to do? And if you fail, that's chalk it up to the game and try again, right? And so it's like, I think that, in terms of people taking these risks or their ability to take these sorts of risks in society, as you mentioned, people that can't weather these sort of economic shocks or socioeconomic shocks in their family situations or whatever, what that really speaks to is like our societal need, right? If we really want to see more diverse streams of thought, more ingenuitive products and things like that, and more inclusion in, venture building or corporate landscape or what have you, we have to account for the fact that people are encountering these scenarios and provide places of stability. And so Africatown, the nonprofit that spun out of my grandfather's bank legacy that led to the Liberty Bank building being apartments, and now they've got the William Gross Center for Cultural Innovation and Enterprise, a beautiful Art Deco fire station from I think 1931 out there on 23rd and Yesler. They've got the Benue Community Home that used to be the Kuro Northwest retirement home for Japanese folks, the Nisei population. So these represent also programs to help stabilize people in, if they have unstable like family situations or they don't have access to the capital to get into like one of UW summer programs or something like that. Providing access to high quality programming, providing pay to people that need internships in technical job upskilling and things like that. You might not have jobs for those people, but you might have capital. What you could do is give sponsorship to people or youth that are getting into different programs to develop these skills, because those organizations that might have the ability and the space to lead programs might not have capital for those kids that would, keep them from having to go flip burgers for the summer, right? When they could be learning, generative AI model training or something like that is really going to prepare them for successful futures. Not saying no knock to McDonald's, that's the start of many people's life stories and economic success. But I think that, providing people with those skills early and building that confidence and those wins goes a long way towards building these titans of industry that we, want to look forward to, especially ones that aren't crazy and do things that are.
So I don't know why this popped in my head. You remember the skit by Dave Chappelle a long time ago where remember back then they had the McDonald's, what the kid's name, he works at McDonald's making big.
Oh yeah, Kevin gets a job. I love that.
Yeah, and then he starts getting robbed and shit,
I'll just tell you that is 100% true that happens as well. Sorry, I'm like knocking over the station. But it's like I experienced this myself, right? So like I knew my grandfather had done this thing. I was born a nerd. That was like what I was going to do in my life, right? So it was like I was always obsessed with like how things worked. So
No, that's one thing I wish I could change. I wish we could change like being a nerd from a negative early on to being positive early on.
Well, I think we did a little bit of it through all the big like tech success, right? So it used to be like the oil or resource extraction companies were like top of the Fortune 500 or whatever. Now that tech has had its day, right? We're seeing culture adopt the idea of being like a geek is cool. Maybe not a nerd. Maybe we're not at nerd yet, but geeks became cool, right? And so, but I think that the way to do it really is by I think one thing is we're taught that you have to be conformist, and I think even our like upskilling in terms of universities and stuff like that is like a shadow of the Industrial Revolution. We're training people to jobs as opposed to like letting people or informing people's natural curiosity or like inspiring curiosity. And I think curiosity is like the biggest pull. Like there's a reason why we're all born with like innate curiosity in any subject matter of life, right? I met a gal in high school that she went to a cheese factory on like a field trip, and that was it for her. She wanted to make cheese. It was like this person was more passionate about cheese than anyone you've ever met. And it'll be all these different directions in life, but if you give that girl then these opportunities to learn about cheese making, you're about to get some exceptional cheese as a society. So we would all be better benefited if we fed people's curiosity as opposed to trying to fit them into specific boxes.
So I have this saying, I always like to say, I know what you said, what I heard was this. So I know what you said, what I heard you say was, our education system is failing us.
Yeah, I think it is, but I think at the same time, there's all these different things. Like my buddy's an English professor, and he's got Chat GPT on his shoulders. You know what I mean? The thing is fundamentally changing out from underneath us, and as like agentic AI systems come online to be our tutors in the future, and all these different things, even beyond what YouTube could do, right? It's education is going to change fundamentally, and so I think that it's kind of just like a horse and car situation. It's just a matter of time until conventional education model just can't operate. None of the finances will be there. We see a lot of the government entities trying to put things on like waiver systems and things like that, and then teachers unions and things like that, they're having difficulty getting pay increases and different things like that. And so I think that it's just ultimately the thing is going to shift underneath, and we're going to have this kind of societal moment. But
so with ChatGPT, Notebook LM, you'd worked with, have you ever messed with Notebook LM yet?
No.
So David told me this lecture, right? So basically, you can you can put like a 20-page document in there, right? Mm-hmm. And it'll make it like a 20-minute podcast.
Oh, good out of time.
So like, are we gonna even need teaching in the future, right? Or education, right? Like, just pop the shit in there, learn it real quick. Like, I don't know. Like, it's a new world, I think.
I think we will, but I think our teachers will be more experiential, because even though the machine can tell you.
Hey, cheers real fast.
Cheers.
So real fast, shout out to Mark Schreiner, CEO of Breeze Docs. He gave me this bottle of bourbon after he came on the podcast.
I thought Angel's Envy for like angel investors was a good drink.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think things like Notebook LM, the digest. I think really what we have today, what we see as a society, and what we've always seen as a society, is that people succeed under mentorship. And so go out there, be a mentor, mentor people, and go out there and find a mentor as a person coming up in any sort of skill or talent. Because it's like there's a great graph where it talks about information, it talks about experience, right? And then it talks about wisdom. And so it's like the dots are the information itself, but they're not connected in any way, shape, or form. Then you can go ahead and connect the dots, and randomly connect the dots. Great, you have more connection. Maybe you can associate concepts and stuff like that. But wisdom comes from connecting the right dots, and that comes from having more experience. Mm-hmm. And so, good and bad experiences to figure out what the right configuration is in connection. And so the benefit of having a wise person, I think, will always be there for our society. Specifically a person, because I think a machine, until we get more advanced robotic solutions out underneath us, the person is going to have the closest proxy to lived experience for you, and be able to tell you direct experience. So a robot can maybe give you stats and things like that, but a human will always be able to connect on like the personal side, and I think point out like adjacencies. I think that what AI will have, we see it saying put the bananas and the milk next to each other in a store, and you'll be able to sell more bananas and milk together. But it's like, I think that in life, there's going to be, I heard there was like an example of some biochemistry company needed a starch to get some kind of, some kind of product made. And they happened to encounter a chef who had been working to try to find different starches for their menu. And was like, we tried this thing. It's like this rare, like Brazilian starch or whatever from, some plant or something like this. And so tried it, and that was the thing. Something about the protein structure of that starch made the product work. And so I don't think an LLM is going to be able to make the improbable guess, because I think...
No, you're right. Have you heard this, the knowledge and wisdom analogy? So I heard this the other day. Knowledge is known... How about I gonna fuck this up? Knowledge is known tomatoes are fruit. Wisdom is known not to put in the fruit salad.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a really good one. Yeah.
So here's one for you. This is one of my pet peeves. Why do you think there's so many startup coaches out here who are really not adding value, right? Like it's almost seems like there's 100,000 startup coaches for every founder,
Yeah. I think that's because we lack standards, right? So I come out of engineering tradition, and especially the computer networks engineering tradition. So we got some standards in computer networks. There's a reason why you can shoot laser beams down fused quartz, fiber optics channels and have it work out for you. Is because we have strict standards on things, and if we don't have standards and conventions and social contracts where it's known in the ecosystem and there are penalties for being a violator, then you're always going to have these sharks in the water that are trying to take advantage of people when they're looking for any sort of direction. The other thing is, society is culpable for what happens in the dark. If we're leaving people in the dark, if we're not informing, these founders of the correct paths and, how to do customer discovery, what the paths towards MVP are, different things like that. If we as an ecosystem aren't getting that information out there, then we're leaving the door wide open for these sharks to come in. And
so is that on society? Is it on the shark? Is it on the individual founder not being smart enough to know they're taking advantage of, or?
Yeah, all of the above. I think, obviously don't be a rube, right? Do the best to inform yourself. If you're not going out there and, validating information that comes to you, or if you're not shopping around, right, you're just going with the most convenient thing. In no other scenario of life does that work out for anybody, right? You got to shop around, do your due diligence, right? At the same time, the abusers, the sharks that maybe have been out there and know that they're not adding value, but nonetheless are trying to extract a little penny for themselves. Like these people, there should be not necessarily blacklist, because I think, people deserve a chance to modify their behavior, but I think there should be some accounting in an ecosystem for people that are in that situation.
So I think one challenge to know people might, like you see it like on LinkedIn all the time, they'll say so-and-so did this to me.
Right.
But they never bust them outright.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, like, why do you think people don't bust people out, right? Like, I don't know who fucking did this bad to you, right? So I might know this person, I don't get fucked over either, right? I always says, hey, I had this situation, blah, 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 I won't name him, but he did this and this,
Right.
Protect yourself. It's like, I don't know, like,
well,
it's like they don't become confrontational, I guess, or.
Well, that, and then there's, the getting sued, right, for libel or defamation if you make any sort of.
Yeah, but if they fucked you over and you can prove it, is
Yeah.
there really defamation?
Yeah, I think also it's just like people, people that don't sue people in certain industries or whatever, because if someone else finds that they're have done litigation, then they're like, oh, well, I don't want to be the next person they sue, because you don't know how reasonable that litigation was, if they're frivolous or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so people are just, generally trying to protect themselves there. But I think that there was a flip side to this coin, which is just the other facility that I think we need is the opportunity for people to correct themselves. Like, we don't do this very well as a society, because
No, definitely not.
Too into the punishment aspect and not enough in the reformation. And I think this comes from an underlying misunderstanding of the inherent value of people, because of our generative abilities and our creative abilities and our interpersonal abilities. And so I think that we're too comfortable with throwing away people that have done wrong. And one thing is, we, especially with the way the internet works, or even the way any sort of broadcast medium works, right? You say the thing, you get in trouble for the thing, but then nobody prints the retraction where you're like, I was wrong. Or,
yeah, is that true? Like New York Times, they'll say Jason Cavness was a piece of shit. and a month later, like page 9, one font, we were wrong.
Yep, exactly. And then,
I always thought that was so fucking wrong.
So you can't unring the bell, right? Allegation gets made,
It's like you're guilty.
You're presumed guilty, and then all of a sudden it's proved incontrovertibly through DNA evidence, right? But then you'll never get access to that same audience that was stimulated by clickbait, and so it's like, even if you're proven right, then now you have just all that backlash. So it's like, people that are in this position, unless society gives the ability to authentically be like, okay, you served your time, or you've done the count. I don't think it's enough to necessarily just go away for a while and then come back to wild economic prosperity if you've done people legitimate wrongs. If you can make people whole, or give them we would say advantage after you've taken from them in that way, then I think that you should be able to be put out there, at least on some provisional basis, or some kind of probationary basis in any given part of life.
So you invest in underrepresented founders, yeah. But is it like an actual vertical, like AI, e-commerce, or is it you're underrepresented, I'll invest, you don't have a good whatever it is you're looking for?
Right. So I'm underrepresented founder, but then I have a tech background myself, and my co-founder is a laboratory scientist, so he has a life sciences background. And so we're skewed towards SaaS, AI. So most of my career is around enterprise SaaS and hardware for computer networks, metrology around those systems. And so, so we're biased towards high tech, high skilled people.
It's like deep tech kind of stuff.
We'll look at deep tech stuff depending on if there's an acquisition target that makes sense or things like this. But really, we're looking for people that are technology readiness level 6 and above. This is a NASA thing to determine how close a science thing is to commercialization. So people that get to that level are people that we kind of look in more deeply. We do referrals to people that do more deep tech stuff. So we So we are a broker when we're not an investor necessarily, and we're not like registered investment broker, but we don't take a cut or whatever. We just kind of direct people to other people that would be better investors, just like to be a better ecosystem partner. But then another kind of aspect of Black experience is, so we're 3% of tech workers, and even then I think in the tech workers, that's like sales and stuff like that. So the percentage of people from Black diaspora that are out there going and developing like businesses that scale on technology, like these SaaS models or like, higher dollar amount med tech devices or different things like that, is very small. But what we see a lot of is a lot of Black founders that are founding in consumer packaged goods businesses. So like your cleaner or your food and beverage that you can buy on a retail shelf, or your beauty products and things like that. So a lot of people are founding those businesses, but because they're in that situation, like you mentioned about that young girl with that company with the phone charging, right? They can't weather a lot of economic shock. They're using maybe what little wealth they have themselves, because we have like 1/8 the net worth of the dominant culture out here. And then, something bumps them off the wagon before they can get their thing retail ready or get a co-packager for their CPG product or whatever. And so recently we've been working to help do business development for companies that are in that situation, because that's like a big part of the Black experience in terms of being a founder. Like some of the first, I think the first woman millionaire was a woman who had a hair product. I cannot remember her name, so I'm going to lose points for that from my audience. But I think that that resonates with a lot of people's lived experiences. Like Black lived experiences, we're just kind of like normal folks shifted 15 degrees, right? So we have like different skin considerations, like, kinky hair considerations, right? So we have to develop all these products for ourselves from these industries that other, people doing innovative product development aren't looking at necessarily. But so, those founders, when they got to raise capital to try to service those markets, are told, well, we don't know if this thing is going to generate $1 billion, or be $1 billion valuation company. So they get shut down. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, one, how do we develop those companies at scale and get on the retail shelves as opposed to dying in the kitchen or in the craft room? So we're devising a consulting network for Black CPG companies that have between 0 to 200K ARR, using the model that we see at the universities. So Albert School of Business has the RAMP program, which can take businesses at 200K ARR, which is annual recurring revenue. University of Washington takes businesses into its Center for Consulting and Business Development at 800K ARR. But so a lot of these Black families, like because of this generational wealth disparity, don't have like that $300,000 friend and family around. So
that's one of my pet peeves, right? I mean, like people say friend and family, like, motherfucker, I am the friends and family, right? Are you kidding me, right? I am the friends and family.
Yep. Let me see what I got in my pocket.
Get the fuck out of here. I hate that fucking term.
Yeah,
I just hate it.
The garage founder, it's like, I wish I had a garage, live in an apartment. What are you talking about?
Oh, another thing about pet peeve, like the stereotype, Jeff Bezos, a garage founder, get the fuck out of here. His daddy gave him $300,000. He was like
Princeton garage founder story.
Came from being a Wall Street, whatever it was,
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate that shit.
Yeah, and people always want to tell these stories because they legitimately have worked hard, right? Just because you were born on third base doesn't mean.
People are wrong. For example, we talked about Shadur Sanders earlier. Right. I mean, he's definitely born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but I'm firm belief he's worked hard. Like he's put the work in. He's done the work, right?
Yeah, and I think that people start to feel themselves because they're like, "What are you talking about? I work hard." And it's like, not to say that you don't work hard, but you do.
But do you really have that hunger?
Yeah, it's like you're a sprinter and you start off like 200 feet, or meters or whatever above the next guy. It's like, yes, you ran your butt off to that finish line, but please remember that other people ran twice as fast long, or had to run across a whole minefield to get where you got. And it's like, people, I think, just because they hold their personal experiences so close to their chest, whereas they hold other people at arm's length, they don't consider the idea that what.
And of course, the perspective, like Shadur and Shallow, probably like I see what you're saying, but our daddy's Deion Sanders. Right. Can you imagine the fucking the level of expectation he has for us, right? The high standard he has for us, right? Like,
also true.
Like I'm Deion Sanders' son. Like we can't fail. Like that's having the name, right?
Yeah, and I think this goes to the point of you can't unring the bell when you say slanderous things, and there's no court really for public opinion, but it's like. People that are in that situation, people need to respect that, you can't compare traumas, you know what I mean? The trauma of growing up.
It's not a competition.
Yeah, it's not a competition. And just be learn from that person's experience as opposed to being like, oh, you're less than me. I think there's this inherent need in society for people to be better or worse or stronger or weaker. They want to do this comparison of themselves to others, and it's just, it ultimately ends up in us having a worse overall outcome because it involves tribes.
So did you see where Bill Gates' daughter recently raised a lot of money?
Oh, I didn't know that.
So one of his daughters like raised a lot of money, right? And then and they try to say she didn't use Bill Gates, whatever, blah blah blah. Your fucking last name is Gates.
Right.
Like, get the fuck out of here, right? And they try. Oh, she didn't do this. She didn't use her name. She didn't use her daddy. And she has like no traction, no nothing, right? Just an idea. She had like lots of money, right? And like in the comments, like, okay, come on now, are you delusional? Like your last name ain't fucking like Kowalski or nothing like that, right?
Right, yeah.
Even if you're not related to Bill Gates, your last name's Gates, so that alone might open doors, right?
Yeah, it's like Willow or Jaden Smith being like, I am independently popular.
Yeah, right.
Like,
okay,
sure
you're definitely on the coattails of your parents.
Yeah, that's not to say you don't have insane pressure in the industry.
Yeah, and you worked hard, but still, like be realistic, right? Like,
and be humble. I think
be
is
humble,
the
yeah.
other bit, right? And I think that our society, there's so much advantage to blustering and stuff like that. Other cultures do a lot to like try to mitigate that, like grandiousness and things like that. Like Sweden, for example, or the Scandinavian cultures have this idea of like maybe no one's that big a deal. So like if the king goes off and like starts feeling himself or whatever, they're like, hey, calm down, So and they do a good job of holding themselves to account on that. And I think
you want me to fix that for you real fast?
Oh yeah, I mean it's whatever. Do a little bit of cleanup here. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Bite there. I think we'll make it better. Slight game there, but
Okay.
we'll call it good.
Okay. Do you have a go-to networking event?
A go-to networking event, yeah. So we do quarterly venture conferences with Venture Black, and so the one coming up on May 17th, and we're gonna have another one as a part of Tech Week in July. We're going to have a bunch of founders come up from Oregon's ecosystem where they do a lot of cool consumer packaged goods business development. And they've got a really mature ecosystem down there because they've got the Food Innovation Center with Oregon State University. So we'll have that event, and then we'll have another big event coming up in November. That'll be our Q4 event, and we typically try to do those in partnership with the University of Washington. And then the big one, the big inclusive venture ecosystem, and specifically around kind of Black lived experience, but it's general because I think it's important for people to look at kind of all like founders. So the big one is going to be the Tech Innovation and Wealth Summit, which we're still shopping around for a convention center kind of location for it, but that's going to be September 18th, I think 19th and 20th.
That's been around for a few years, hasn't it?
Well, so that one just started last year.
Okay, I remember hearing about it last year. Okay.
And so we did it, and then we didn't know about the revival of the Seattle Tech Week. So we were like the week before, and then Seattle Tech Week. And I don't know if you've done a Seattle Tech Week, but if you go to like a significant amount of events, it's like a gauntlet. You are wore through if you go to a lot of Seattle Tech Week events. Like props to Lindsay Randall, who I think like has the record for attendance, who just got 40 under 40 as well for Puget Sound. So congratulations. But so those events are kind of the big ones. So we'll be doing that event for Seattle Tech Week, May 15th. If you're out there submitting events for.
So what do you like personally got out of doing all these events?
What do I end up doing?
What do you get professionally and personally out of doing these events? Like putting these events on? Yeah,
personally, I mean, I just love the festival of creativity, like seeing what people are interested in and what they're going all in on, making these big bets. What captured their interest, all our cheese makers of the world, they're really going to devote themselves to whatever it is. I met a guy on a call that was like, I've made the perfect smokeless chimney. And it's like, okay, I might not be your ideal customer,
but I'm kind of curious.
But I'm kind of curious, right? When you go all in on smokeless chimneys, I'm like, okay, this is about to change my whole perception of smokeless chimneys, right? So it's like it's just interesting to hear those sorts of things. And then professionally, what I get out of it is all the connections that are necessary for doing the sort of capital transactions that I'm in charge of. And so, people that want to allocate capital, that are looking to work in private equity as an asset class, or specifically, more venture scale private equity opportunities, meet people that are, people that are founding companies, people that just have interesting perspective. I really think perspective is the main thing. Like learning all the different lived experience people have, you love it.
So how do you personally figure out? I hate to use this term, like a good connector or a bad connector, right? How do you know this guy's gonna give value to me? I can give value to him versus. Okay, this motherfucker's like a fucking scam artist. He's gonna fuck me over. Like, how do you determine that, right?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got an ask, so I think that the more authentic they are with making their ask is useful. And then if they lead with giving, that's typically a good sign. If they're like, okay, we're trying to do a mutually beneficial thing. So let me signal that I acknowledge that what you need is important in this. So let's talk about your needs, like as maybe the front of the conversation, and then we'll work our way towards what I need. Or what I need can be informed by what you need, and they're acknowledging that scenario. So that's how I typically find like the most valuable partnerships, right? And hopefully there's a match there. But even if it's not a match, I still want someone that, you know, potentially is going to talk about the sort of work that I'm doing that I'm passionate about, right? So it's like, I think everything is typically a win. Like, and you know, the people that are going to try to screw me over, like, you know, I'm typically good with contracts now because I've like been screwed over. So it's like, now let's put on paper what our expectations are, and then we'll do alignment. So like, I listen to what you're saying and you're talking a good game, but it's like at the end of the day, what does the contract say? And at that point, you know, if we can't come to terms on what'll be mutually beneficial, then it is what it is.
So obviously you don't want to kill anyone's dream. Like, you don't want to say, hey, Jason, there's no way this is going to make it work. But like, when should you tell someone maybe you should be a founder? Like, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe 9 to 5 is for you, right?
Yeah. See, I try not to get into the business of telling people that, because one of the interesting parts about life is that everybody is one knock door away from like money that they didn't specifically earn, or like, so for example, and not to knock these specific founders, but there's like $230 million that was allocated to a company that wanted to do robotic pizza making in a car as on the route to delivery, so that your pizza could be that much fresher when it gets to your door, right? But they couldn't get the cheese to stay on the pizza when they were driving these cars. So they had to park these pizza making robot vehicles, which gave them no time value versus making it at the factory and just driving it, right? Plus they've just spent $230-something million, right, trying to make this technology. So that should have probably been a no. Or like,
have you heard of Moto Pizza?
Oh, Mod Pizza?
No, Moto, M-O-T-O. So I went to a Filipinos. So this guy named John Stedberg, their event his place like maybe two years ago. I went to it, and I went to a Filipinos founders event. Right, he was a keynote speaker. His name's Lee Haddle, I think. Right, his company makes pizza with robots.
Oh, I believe that. But like the idea of
but he said all the robots are in the store. They're about to spend in San Diego, all over Asia. He's trying to raise like $20 million.
Yeah.
And the craziest thing, like, there's no difference, right? It's like,
right, pizza's pizza. Robot makes it, person makes it. It's the fire, the wood fire oven. You know, shout out to the great people making pizza out there. But it's like, but the idea of doing it on the go, that was going to convert value for it. So it should have been something that was like taken more seriously in like the early stages and like proven out, right? But it's
like did they do like product market fit surveys, like basic economics?
So I think just because, you know, the zero interest rate policy, like people are like, oh sure, I like pizza. Who doesn't like? Oh, this guy's got a robotics degree from, you know, worked with NASA for a little while or whatever. And so now you got your pizza thing going, right? And but it's like, you know, that $230 million could have been, you know, early stage capital for a lot of companies that were doing things that were going to revolutionize humanity.
So this is a good switching point, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer, like a lot of like VC funds, tech people, like what problems are they really solving, right? Like do we need another dating app?
Yeah,
do we need another fucking bicycle?
Right.
Like what are we really solving to like advance the human race, right? I mean, of course there's stuff out there, you know, there's like, you know, genetic splicing, all this like aging stuff. But like, what are we really doing? Like, make the world better. You know, do we really need like, you know, another fucking, I don't know, pizza app,
another fart machine app on this mobile phone? When we got saturated with that kind of stuff. But it's like what I think is like the better way to approach the conversation of maybe we should critically evaluate like what we're allocating time and resources to is just asking those questions like, oh, like who told you that you needed a robotic pizza delivery to your door specifically? Who told you that it needed to be in the trucks, right? Where are you confirming these insights, right? And it's just like, well, if we build it, they will come. And it's like, oh, well, I mean, but how much?
I mean, that works if you're Steve Jobs, right? But most of us are not Steve Jobs.
Right, exactly. And maybe through, you know, putting your product out there, you're creating new access to fundamental technologies, and maybe there's all these other supply chain reasons for you to take these big bets and stuff like that. And so the sum of all those calculations could add up to a pizza delivery robot, you know, company that made sense in the grand scheme of things, even though it was ultimately failure. But I think, you know, asking those sorts of questions can at least help us understand why this thing is happening. And if you don't have a convincing answer for like why you're doing a specific thing, and it's just because, oh, I want to test my chops or whatever, then it's like, yeah, maybe reconsider a little bit. Then at the same time, I'm sure like those folks got their payday or whatever if they didn't, you know, get past their vesting, if they got past their vesting cliffs or whatever. So I mean, I think the financial incentive will always be there, but I think the main thing we can do is just teach people about customer discovery. At the end, people start raising funds or creating companies to raise funds or creating companies to sell to and acquire or whatever. Sure, you know what I mean? But it's like, are you providing value? Like, what are you doing that, like, so in order to become a millionaire, you have to provide $1,000 worth of value to 1,000 people. That's the basic criteria. You can mix and match those numbers however you want to grow or scale on either side. But if you can do that, then congratulations, you're a millionaire, right? But it's like, so approaching things from that angle as opposed to, oh, if I build a company that looks like this, I might be an acquisition target for so-and-so, or so-and-so might, invest in me. You've just allocated potentially like the next 10 years of your life, if you're honest, to something that's going to be annoying to you. You know what I mean? So like, go and talk to people about what they want and what needs to belong in the world, so that by the time you've raised all the money, did all to do, and the world has a new thing, you have your money, and everybody's happy.
So what's your goal with your VC funds? Like increase something by something, decrease something by something? Like what's your long-term goal for this?
Yeah. So if we could get angel investors, so like I'll look at it from a historical data perspective compared to women. So back in 2002, women were something like 5% of angel investors and got 3% of angel investment. Fast forward to 2022, women are getting, or are angel investors at 40%, 42%, I believe, if I got my number right. And then actually 31% of people receiving angel investment. So roughly 30% of people that go out there and shop for angel investment get it. So women are slightly overrepresented in angel investment, but still underrepresented in terms of people that receive venture capital, so VC money, which are the larger checks and the larger sum of money. And then they're underrepresented in terms of being venture capitalists themselves. And so what I'd like to do is, through angel investing, grow our amount of angel investment from being 1% of angel investors to being more closely proportional to the population at 15% of angel investors. And so currently only 0.4% of pre-seed stage funding goes to Black founders. I want to get that up to 15%. And so I think this is like a couple decades journey to do. And I think what it amounts to doing is convincing more people that have gone out and been successful in the corporate landscape, teaching them about being accredited investors. If they are accredited investors, teaching them about the asset class of private equity through startup investment. And so I think I can grow the number of angel investors that way, and I can grow the amount of early stage capital getting to underrepresented founders that way as well. So my goal is to grow the amount of Black angel investors up to something like 14-15%, and then to grow the amount of pre-seed stage capital up to 14%. If I do just that, the rest of it will take care of itself. And the reason why I say this is because, going back to the example for women, up until 2021, I believe, possibly 2018, a little bit dyscalculia there, women only had, it had to be 2021 because the other 18 number, they only had 18 unicorn valued businesses. So that's companies that reach $1 billion valuation. So they raise around, based off of the idea that they've got $1 billion worth of value in their company. So they quadrupled from 18 to, I think it was like 87, whatever the multiple of 18 there is. And then I think as of 2022 had 124 unicorn businesses. So currently there's only 13 Black founded unicorn companies in the United States. And so if we fix this pre-seed stage thing, I think using relational capital through teaching people about being investors and investing in this asset class and, doing the work of organizing, the venture landscape, then I think that we can get that unicorn number up to a significant amount. Like women are 50% of the population, so we might not get to 124 in the next 2 decades, but we might be able to get to 30, 40, 50, something.
How's that you got involved in this VC stuff, right? Like, what made you were you I don't know, okay, I want to be a VC. Like, what made you what happened? Like, say, okay, you know what, this is gonna be my life's work.
Yeah. So I was working over at Africatown. So I left Silicon Valley as a result of George Floyd. I was just like, look, maybe I can't change the bigger picture of things, but I can create local change. And I had an avenue to do that because Africatown had just gotten the William Gross Center, that fire station I was talking about, turned over on a 99-year lease to develop a workforce hub to get youth into the knowledge economy, or to do more workforce development generally. And so Coming to African to do that, I had the startup experience as a nonprofit guy. So I was there when they had 5 employees and we rented out first floor and helped them scale up to being 5 large commercial properties. And so doing all the tech back end of that, but then also helping with the back office work because I was a corporate guy and had seen corporate systems and knew how to help construct them. And so going into Africatown, doing that as a startup, seeing people do it from the corporate perspective in terms of startup and tech. One, I was like, okay, where are all my tech founders at, right? We're in the shadow of Amazon and Microsoft. We're all the black, high growth venture scale founders. I'm seeing a lot of community, place-based and lifestyle companies, but I was like, the tall trees shade the forest. So I was like, let me figure out where the tall trees are and see what economic impact they have there. And so it really was this kind of quest to figure out okay, what's the landscape like? Then when I saw what it was, we didn't even have a professional association for black founders or funders. Created a meetup group to do that, and I think that's where we kind of first encountered each other. So that exercise and looking at the numbers convinced me, but then that number that we're more likely to end up poor after being born rich, that was well, this is what we have to do now. Because if we don't fix that, there's literally no generational advantage to capitalism, right? And I think this is why people want to go through around cultural Marxists for black people, because we're in the situation where so to put some more numbers behind it, so during the Great Depression, white Americans experienced something like 41% home ownership on average. And that, in the cultural memory of America, was one of the worst events, right? Of course, we had the Dust Bowl and all these other things exacerbating it at that time. But that was we were poor, soup kitchens, awful, right? And crime and all these sorts of things were horrible. And you get all these stories like the Grapes of Wrath written, right? Where, all these, horrible things are happening to people. So to put that in perspective, African Americans only recently have gotten above 41% average home ownership, and we are just cresting along that line. So we've lived in this sustained economic depression, and people have attributed that to our character and all these sorts of things. But we've constantly been under these attacks, right? And if we're not able to take advantage of capitalism, which I think is a great system as far as machines go, because it gives you pricing information on scarcity and supply and all these sorts of things that command economies don't give you. So it's if we can't get the benefit of capitalism, then we're not going to succeed, I think, generally, because I think that ultimately capitalism, in terms of a resource allocation thing, is going to be the thing until we get to a post-scarcity society. So anyway, thinking about that, how do we take advantage of capitalism so that our societies look more equal, and so that what I think people are most mad at, which is poverty. So they look at poverty and then they try to attribute cause to it that absolves them of blame, oh, that person is poor, not because I live and have developed an inferior society, but because their skin color makes them want to run around and go crazy, or their gender makes them hysterical or whatever, right? So it's I think that by fixing poverty, by fixing these, problems of scarcity, really, that we'll just have a better society that works better for everyone. So capital is the main thing that has attributed to the material success of our society. And so capitalism and venture capital are some of the main parts that make that possible. Put some more numbers to it. So the average white household has approximately 17% of their household assets in business equity. That's not to say.
For you going on, to me, it's just fucking impressive. You have to fucking memorize. It's so fucking impressive. I have no such a memory. You bam, bam, bam. Hey,
because they're so stark. To me, these numbers, they're like sad friends, right? They just live with me all the time. And so, but on the average black family's household asset portfolio, they only have 4% of business equity. Again, not speaking for, venture-specific stuff. So, if I'm trying to fix the racial wealth gap, right, in the United States, which I'll say is the size of the problem I'm trying to tackle, right, then I have to get more black families a larger allocation of the higher performing asset class, which over the last 5, 10, 20-year cycles has been business equity. That's not to say things won't change, right? But I think that a strong indicator, like Warren Buffett is always going to tell you whatever the stock market is doing, it'll be fine in the long term, right? Because it's just, we've engaged enough people for it to have critical mass or whatever, and the technology stack is there. So I think that, in order to, the reason why I'm doing the things that I'm doing is because if I can get more black families a larger share of equity on their asset portfolio, then we can fix the generational wealth gap, because it's exponential. Most black families have been getting their generational wealth gains, their wealth gains over the last 10 years from home equity ownership. So that 41% number of home ownership on average, cresting that's where we're looking for investment, right? So we're missing this larger, it's outperforming something like by 30% asset class, which is this business equity in terms of public equity, I think is that, but even private equity is even more exponential. And so the idea of public equity, so everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people have the opportunity to invest through their 401k, and the government has been buying a stock and things like that through quantitative easing and all the stuff to like not look like they're doing inflationary stuff. But all this is having the impact of inflating the public market assets. But this private equity bit, right, this startup stuff, right, that's still someone has to knock on your door and tell you you're an accredited investor in order for you to even get like.
So I have to ask, like, how do you get so smart at this stuff, right? You have economics degree, you went to YouTube University. Like, how do you get so smart on this stuff?
My grandfather was a banker.
Okay.
At a time when civil rights
Okay.
were crazy. So I think that it's like looking at that. I think there's probably just my whole family has had this like what's going on consciousness. Okay. Like
and like how do we like teach people this, right? Because most people like I'm guessing like less than 1% of people have this knowledge, right?
Yeah, and I think it's from podcasts disseminating information this way, from going out and talking at events, right? From just looking more into this, like for me, and like part of the big reason why all this is going on is because I'm just inherently curious. Why are things the way they are? And I'll give you a story, and I think this is like probably one of my favorite stories.
So before you start, yeah. I think I told before I ever came to the podcast, maybe then, like when I started this podcast, my IQ was 70, and then we raised to 110. You raised it over to 110 or 113.
Hey, goals, right? Well, this is one of my favorite stories that I think will raise it up with another point here. So I went to a bunch of Jesuit schools, right? So I went to Gonzaga University and Seattle University. And so at one of these schools, in one of these classes, I heard this story, and it's lived with me ever since.
Hey, raise your microphone up a little bit.
Oh, yep. I'll raise the microphone up. So the story is...
I'm come fix that real fast.
Oh, okay.
But keep on talking.
Man, I feel like I'm leaving everybody in suspense here. So the story about this belled cat, right? So there was a chapel in one of these rural communities, and a new priest came, and he wanted to give mass. And in this mass, there was this cat that kept walking in when he was trying to do, the prayer and everything like this. And so eventually the priest got sick of the cat rubbing against his feet and distracting him from prayer. And so he takes the cat outside and ties it to the front of the church. And so, thank you. And so he ties the cat to the front of the church, and they go through and have mass. And so every time they have mass, he ties the cat to the front of the church. So this cat it's obviously an apocryphal story. So this cat dies, the priest dies, right? And so a new priest has to come in, and the cat comes in and does its thing, and they're like, God, this cat, you gotta go tie the cat to the front of the church. And so that priest also passes on. And then the next congregation, the next priest comes in, and all the parishioners, the deacons and everything like that are like, oh, we can't start mass at this chapel until we tie a cat to the front of the church. The meaning behind why they were tying this cat to the front of the church just became a part of the liturgy. They lost the cause for why they were doing what they were doing. And I think this exists through our society. We're just looking at things without seeing them. We don't understand why we're doing things. We don't understand the evolution of our ideas, or like what the inertia is of racism that people encountered, right, through civil rights era, Jim Carrey, even today, right, the things people are confronted with. So we have to do this like a critical investigation of society. And I think really how do we teach people is to teach them to do this critical exercise of society. Don't just take things at face value. If you see someone acting strangely, think more deeply about that. Because the inherent nature of people isn't to just go out there and do things that aren't in their best interest. There's usually things that cause them to do that. And so instead of attributing those to problems with their character or whatever, and everybody ultimately is accountable to themselves for the things they do, but it's like looking at what sort of systems, and all the stuff I've been talking about are all systems, right? What kind of systems are there reinforcing that behavior? Or what systems are out there counteracting that behavior exhibiting in that individual? And so I think if we're thinking about the things we encounter in life, and I think everything, so I love history too. And so like going out there and thinking about history, looking at, what echoes of the past are here today, and why are they still here with us, right? If we can think about things in that way, then I think we'll see the world in a more real way, and I think we'll be more empowered as people to do it.
So this is gonna be kind of weird, but I have to use the bathroom.
Oh, get up.
So I want you to do like this. Talk about you want to talk about like like talk about the events you have come on, how people help just like go. Whatever you want to talk about.
Sure thing. Okay, let me see here. Lean this guy forward a bit too. Things I want to talk about. So, talk about my grandfather's. Oh, I'll talk about my Uncle Amari, right? So my Uncle Amari is Amari Tahir Garrett, also known as Cordell Garrett. So he has been a long time social justice, civil rights activist in the Central District of Seattle, as we mentioned the story through Mr. William Gross back in the settler days. William Gross was the second black man in Seattle. His wife and daughter were the first and second black women of Seattle. This is back in the 1860s. So my uncle, Amari Garrett, right, he was really my grandfather's pupil. So my grandfather, in addition to being an electrical engineer, in addition to being a banker, he would go out there and build houses in Madison Valley in the Central District. And so my Uncle Amari grew up building houses, grew up playing in sports, grew up doing all these amazing things. Ended up becoming a part of the largest or the longest, what do we say here? Civilian occupation of a building in U.S. history. So the Coleman School was set to be demolished, so that I believe it was the I-90 could be built, so that like a bypass lane could be built through it. In the Central District, which was a black school in a black district, and so they were going to close it. And he opposed this on the grounds that, well, if you're going to close a school in the black district, right, you would then create another school as opposed to like shoving, more kids into tighter class sizes and whatever. But they had no plans to do that. So my uncle occupied this building for 13 years against the police, everybody that could be thrown at it. This building is currently the Northwest African American History Museum on Massachusetts, and I want to say 13th, or no, so 23rd in Massachusetts. That's got to be it. So, so that building is important today. It houses the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. Jimi Hendrix Park is just right there. So, he took that on and made that possible to be a community. He was a leader at a place that's now called the McKinney Center. Used to be called VLSI, which is a Skills Development Center on 20th in Jackson, the Central District. He was, a bunch of people's sports coaches. I'm talking about my Uncle Amari Garrett, who just had his 79th birthday yesterday. And so he was just this amazing person who, when he came to my college graduation at Gonzaga, and at his birthday, I got the opportunity to kind of talk about, what it means to be a principled individual, because I think part of it's not just recognizing what's right or wrong in society and understanding the longer term impact of it. It's also encouraging yourself to do the right thing as opposed to just take immediate short-term advantage for yourself for personal gain. And so my uncle kind of stands out as one of these, his heroic figures in this. When he came to my college graduation, to finish that part of it, I had just gotten out of an interaction where a friend of mine, we were sitting in a car and we were at an intersection and someone had asked to borrow some money. And so my friend, she was, callously making fun of this person because I was questioning our friendship. He walked up to the window, knocked on, was like, excuse me, I've got to correct the record here, right? And he's like, I just want you to know how hard it is to get a job out here when you don't have a phone, right? When you don't have a house to have a phone in. So, we can't get callbacks for resumes, so anybody that's going to deal with us. And then, to get ready and everything like that before a job interview is crazy when you don't have a place to get ready. And so, that, got me really thinking about, me and my focus on myself and, the work that I'm doing just as I was exiting college, right? And so at my graduation, I was talking about this story and what had happened and how crazy it was. And so my uncle said, I like to make signs for the people on the street, right? To take care of the people that are living in the alley. And I just thought that was so profound because he spent his whole life working in, civil justice, putting himself at great risk. And then just, himself, putting himself out there for the benefit of others. That really stood with me as a principled move. And, looking at the success of Africatown now, where we have something like 5 commercial properties, or like working real hard to stem the tide of gentrification in the Central District, and doing great work in terms of getting people off the street with the Binu Community Home and getting youth into the knowledge economy through the William Gross Center for Culture and Innovation. My uncle made all that possible in 2 moves. One, he worked with a property owning family that had some people break into one of their abandoned properties. My uncle just went in there, cleared all the folks that were doing drugs, and set up a youth center called the Umoja Peace Center on 23rd and Spring Street, and put in like a little computer science lab, built out a little recording studio for people that were interested in music, and through that, at the time, my young cousin Amari Garrett, he was in there doing like little video game design, his first real exposure to computer science, right? And so we'll talk about it in a minute here. So anyway, so this Umoja Peace Center led to Africatown getting allocated through the family that owned the Midtown Plaza block. Currently it's Midtown Plaza. Used to be a post office there and some other things. One of the members of that family, Tom Bengasser, was basically one of the holdouts on that property development deal and said, unless Africatown gets this piece for all the work they've done on developing programs here to better the community, unless they get a piece, then I'm not selling and we don't get to develop this block. So through that work, we got the Africatown Plaza, which currently stands on 23rd and Spring, and it's one of Seattle's kind of unique architectural pieces. So you'll see the Jimi Hendrix Museum standing outside with all these beautiful organic shapes. The Africatown Plaza building on 23rd and Spring has a lot of those amazing shapes. And down to the detail on the sidewalk, you see echoes of the Rio de Janeiro swoopy sidewalk kind of stuff. But in addition to Africatown Plaza, right, as being one of those examples of what happens when one individual takes a principled stand against what is wrong, and then does the hard work of remediating from a social perspective and really putting themselves out there. He was even arrested by the police for occupying this Umoja Peace Center. The other members of the Bengasser family took exception to him being the holdout there. So taking that principled stance allowed for something that's like $5 million was required to ultimately purchase the land after Africatown got right of first refusal on it, and then I think the commercial development had to have been something like $10 million to build the building, everything like that. So it's got to be like $15 million worth of property development because one guy cleared out a bunch of people in a drug den that was owned by a private family to build a community center.
So Evan, you went to like Seattle, you went to Gonzaga, Seattle University,
Yep.
Majority white schools. I'm assuming there's like less than 5% non-white people there, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So going to two white schools, how did it turn out you was like so, like for better term, so pro-black, right? I would think like it's just a white school, you're black is like kind of like tailored, watered down some kind of way, right?
Yeah, and so really in the engineering program at Gonzaga, I think it was me and one other brother, and he was a mechanical engineer, so we didn't see each other too much. But it's like, I think the idea of being one of the only people, I might have been the first guy to graduate from Gonzaga University with a degree in computer science and electrical engineering.
What year did you graduate again?
2010.
Okay, so pretty recent.
Pretty recently, so the recession was going on at the time. But yeah, recently, right? So you'd think that, Gonzaga's been around, since like 1917 or something like that, right?
I mean, I think like white Roman Catholic,
yeah, that's it.
privilege,
That's it, yeah. I went to school with Alan Mullally's daughter, who's like CEO of Ford and Boeing, right? We hung out, like not often. She was into my buddy. Sorry. But yeah, so.
Pizos.
Yeah. But so, it was definitely that crowd, right? And I wasn't Catholic myself, but it's like what really made me so pro-black was just the idea of, so this is how the world works. This is how, privilege educates its children and sustains privilege. And what happens for the rest, and why is this happening for the rest, and what are the ramifications of what happens to the rest for all of us? And so I think I have the privilege of like being exposed to that environment. Like I haven't been in very many comfort zones in my life, and so being exposed to that and seeing how it works really made me want to fix that as a system. Because I fundamentally don't believe that it's the right move to leave, your human.
And did you have relatively a good experience at both schools?
Yeah, I had a pretty good experience. I mean, there's always like the craziness. Right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Gal that I dated had Sarah Palin's autobiography on her bookshelf. So we had some wild experiences, right? But I think that...
Your girlfriend did?
Yeah.
Did the sex make up for it?
We lived and learned. No comment. But yeah, I think that, learning what other people are experiencing and why they maintain the views they do was really interesting. So learning why she had those views and meeting...
That's missing so much in society right now.
Yeah. I mean, because people come into information not often by logical reason, It's just because my whole support system tells me this is true. Like,
Yeah.
these people, why would they lie?
I did my research. My
Right.
same Facebook friend said.
Exactly. And to them, that feels real, right? And if they haven't had a college experience, if they haven't gotten their, paper thrown in the trash can by a professor and told to do better, right?
Yeah.
They might think that's quality information. You know what I mean? So you can't, if you dig in trenches and say this person's wrong and they're wrong as a person, as opposed to they're wrong because they don't have access to what it would take for them to be right. Looking at it from that perspective and saying, well, okay, maybe we lost this person, but what can we do for the next person coming up, right? That is going to arrive at some conclusion. How do we help them to arrive at high quality information and make high quality decisions, right? So that all, I think, this all amounts to me being pro-Black is because I saw the bubbles, I saw the deficits, and I saw how people were viewing, so the same gal that had the Sarah Palin autobiography, she told me one day, and I had this crazy out-of-body experience. It was the closest thing I've come to a religious experience, where she said, I don't believe that feminism or African American studies should be taught in universities because they're just studying victimization. And I was like, okay, but we should learn about how people victimize people, right? So that we can stop people from victimizing people in the future. It's not that these people were willing victims, right? It's not that they applied to be victims. Someone victimized them, and we've got to understand the science of victimization or how cultures arrive at conclusions, like the things we saw in Germany in a certain period, right? So it's to prevent these sorts of things in society, we have to look. And as an engineer, I found that very few problems get solved by not looking at them. And I think that being exposed to different viewpoints to be able to look at society's problems from a social lens caused me to, and being a Black person, right? So my mom's white, so I'm mixed, right? So I get to see both cultures. I get to see how people arrive at their cultural understandings and where their cultural understandings break down in all of these sorts of areas. And then getting exposed to deep republicanism and friendly deep republicanism that has some really weird views when it comes to the macro scale. Getting to see, okay, so those are how those people are arriving at these sorts of social systems that cause these larger discrepancies that are causing our overall society from going the Mad Max route instead of the Star Trek
So,
route.
a couple of questions for you, right? First of all, so with all these stats, right? There's no stats that says biracial, right? There's no stats that say biracial people raise money or biracial people raise tech funds. There's always we usually you're biracial, you're going to the Black thing,
we're
right?
still getting to Black and female. Female is tracked by PitchBook and things.
But there's nothing tracking biracial.
There's nothing. You're starting to see it more, and so I have a friend.
And it could be Black or white, Mexican, Spanish, whatever, biracial, but there's nothing tracking
There's
that, right?
biracial as a category I've seen it, but the people that do, the demographers that make these sorts of questionnaires that people can submit that information, there's no convention there. And
Okay.
if I'm misspeaking, but what I've seen in terms of the medical industry, all these different things, and I've spoken to people in these things, is they're internally doing studies on what information they should collect and how they should ask these questions, but there's not been an effort to look at. So there are census things that go on, but it's not a convention. It's not you're using this convention to track this racial, economic, ethnic group.
Okay.
And it's not mandated in any sort of industry or anything like that.
And then I think this probably comes back to the Civil War. I think what's the rule back David? You're 1/8 blood, Black, you're Black.
The one drop rule, I think.
Yeah, one drop rule. So if you're Black or white, everyone says I'm Black, right? No, I've never met a biracial person that says I'm white.
Yeah.
My wife's Black, my kids say they're Black, right? I've not met a Black white person or whatever Black who says I'm Black, Asian, Black, whatever case, they always say they're Black, right?
Right, because one thing that is interesting about the lived experience, and I think why the one drop rule. So the one drop rule ultimately comes to how you move through society and how it encounters you as you're moving through it. And the reason why is because even though my dad speaks like I speak, so I just don't speak with African American vernacular English commonly. And that's because we're 3 generations deep of Northerners, right? We're pretty far removed from the American South, which is where you get the peppered speech and things like that, right? So we don't talk like we're from the Shenandoah Valley, right? We don't proud of that. So, but it's
that's kind of funny.
Yeah,
and facts, double facts.
And people think, oh well, that's because you're white or whatnot, and it's well, no, it's just this is how Northerners speak, and unless you're affecting it, right, which there are all these reasons to do, but it's because when I go out in the street, and even before I talk to anybody, before they see my name, because my last name happens to be French through my mom, which is Belgian French, right? So before they encounter all their information, they just see a Black man, And then all of the movies that they play in their head about black men or whatever
Yeah.
start playing, and it's like then they see my name and they're like, oh, these French black people are so nice. Oh, he's so clean and well spoken, right? And then it's like, oh, and he's an engineer. You're one of us economically, and it's like, yes, but not for the right reasons. You're thinking the right thing, but for the wrong reasons, right? We're all the same thing. These people just have not have the same opportunities that I have. They've been looked at in different ways. Maybe their last name wasn't French enough for you. Maybe they didn't speak the way that you thought was going to be acceptable for your business venture to add on. They could have the same skills, the same curiosity, all these sorts of things, but you wrote them off, and you were on the path to writing me off, right? And then, the biracial aspect kicks in, and then they're like, oh, that's why, because you're like not fully black because you're this other thing. And they did that with like Obama and all these things too.
Has anyone have said this? It's fucked. Have ever said, "Oh, you speak so well, your white mother must have raised you."
Yeah. There's that aspect too. I don't think people have directly said that, but it's like I think
Like maybe hinted to it or something,
Yeah, I think they've hinted at it, but it's like. And the other major thing is, think a lot of black people too, like they hear me talk this way and they're just like, oh, are you're
not hood enough?
Not hood enough. And for me, I was like, well, I mean, being hood isn't going to get me the grant from NASA that I need for my robotics lab.
Yo, homie. Yeah. 911, Flavor Flav.
Right. There's not as much in it for me culturally because of my grandfather, I had this huge investment in technology that I was just like, that's where my identity's coming from. Like, I didn't like the idea that my identity was going to come from, or my culture, people would even say my culture was going to come from like the recording industry or something like this. And so I was like, no, we've done jazz, we've done all these things before hip hop, so tell me my culture is hip hop. Or even to tell me my culture is like the transatlantic, Middle Passage slavery thing. Slavery isn't a place, you can't be from there. So my history transcends all of this, and it's like one of the oldest histories on the planet, and so it's like, for people to tell me I need to be in this box at this point in time in North America was just...
Yeah, no, for people say, you got to be in this box, right? No, I don't want to be in this box, right?
Yeah, it's like, to what extent does it benefit me to be in the box? To what extent does it benefit any of us if all of us are rappers, if all of us are like blacks, what is it, African-American studies? Like, somebody's got to be an engineer, somebody's got to be a doctor, somebody's got to be an electrician, someone's got to be a plumber, you know what I mean?
So I might mix this up. I remember seeing this somewhere. For some reason, I want to say it was like Chad Johnson, Oxosico said this. I'm probably wrong, but he's like, someone said they went to school, right? Like a pretty like mixed school, right? Black, mixed, or whatever. And they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? White kids, doctor, lawyer, tech person, whatever. Mexicans, like, I want to be a clean business. I want to own my business. All the black kids, rapper, athlete, right?
Well, talk to him now, and it's a YouTuber, right?
Oh, YouTube, YouTube.
That's the cultural norm.
And so the guy's like, well, how do we change this dynamic, right? Because what the stats like any high school sport to college, like maybe 20% make it. From any college sport to pros, make less than 1%, right?
Right.
And then like you're not gonna make it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The entertainment lottery, like, and you can't fault it, right? We built a society where there's maybe a basketball court in every neighborhood, right? But is there a makerspace in every neighborhood? Probably
No.
not. Is there a person that's going to walk through
coding place? Or even simple, like, hey, is there like a place like learn how to do plumbing, trade schools?
Right. And if you don't have that, then now you've got to hopefully maybe have an uncle that's going to teach you. And the reason why people are saying I want to be a venture capitalist when they're 10 years old is probably because they met someone in their family that's a venture capitalist.
That's a good question, right? I used to ask. I've heard ask you like, so question I used to ask like most people in the little kid, they want to be superhero, fireman. What made you want to be a VC?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so originally I wanted to be an engineer. This was because I was curious and I needed to know how everything worked. I look at the power lines and I know what my grandfather did, and I was like, oh, so I can figure this out, right? I wanted to know how all of our infrastructure was operated, and I wanted to just have high quality information. And I think certain people are just born with, like, some people are born with like more fast twitch muscles. Some people are born ectomorphs, endomorphs, whatever. I think some people are born with just more like starting curiosity. And I was born with a lot of curiosity. So you got people like Da Vinci, and he asks himself questions like, does a dragonfly beat all of its wings at once, each wing individually, 2 at a time on either side? These questions that seem meaningless at first value, right? And you can abstract this to, okay, like, why are we solving the quadratic formula these ways, right? Why are we factoring polynomials these ways? Like, all those, sorry, my phone's going off here.
That's fine.
So it's like, at the core of this is just curiosity. And so I'm like, I started off that way, and getting out into the world, like, I just started off wanting to know all this about machines. So I deconstruct things and stuff like that. And so then you go to engineering and you start solving the world's problems, and then you see the patterns repeating themselves in like cloud engineering and working with computer networks and things like that. And then maybe you want to go and work in the innovation economy with new cutting edge sorts of things and more consumer sort of facing things, just to have more relatable experience as you get older and things like that. But then when you, like, I think at the core of being, an engineer or an analytical thinker is this like falling in love with problems. And so falling in love with the most impactful problem, like Amdahl's law, or optimize that which has the most gain for optimization, right? So the thing to me, the hole in the bucket, like I can make as many beautiful products as I want. I can, make $1 bajillion. I can do all these sorts of things. But if I still have to step over someone who's addicted to some substance or living in a tent, right, then all of that was, for nothing, essentially.
Yeah.
So, and I can't walk that great, so we're not stepping
So,
over it.
scenario for you, right? Let's suppose someone comes to you and say, Evan, I believe what you're doing, but I want to invest $100 million in you.
Right.
But you had to invest $50 million in white people.
Sure.
You would take it?
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because
I know some people would say, no, I'm dedicated to cause, fuck the white people. It's only, this, right?
Yeah. I mean, but here's what I would do, right? With the $50 million in these white people, I would go and invest in white people that were building businesses that would advantage underrepresented communities.
Ding, 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 ding.
So if you're building ed tech, guess what? You're about to get some
ding, ding, ding. Okay.
Right? So all these things that are pathways to socioeconomic mobility so that we can turn on more of this human development index stuff. I'll take your money to do that all night and day.
Nice. But some people out there are like, oh no, I'll never do that. I only invest in, KCB,
Well, me, I'm outcome, right? There's a book, Outcome Driven Innovation. I can't remember it. So it's like, what outcomes are we looking for? Oh, I'm looking for closing the racial wealth gap. So what can I do? I can, also I'm an electrician, so like, or electrical engineer. So transistors, right? So that guy is the gate, right? And so if he can put in a little capital, right? Or rather, I should say I'm the gate, right? So if I can pipe his capital to, the larger opportunity, then that's what I need to do, right? I can't focus on, like the short-term little current that I'm supporting or whatever, right? Or my little, things about myself. It's got to be about, building things that have the outcomes in society that are important. Like, don't think about the short-term problem of, oh, I need to specifically get black capital, or only the short-term aspects of getting capital to black founders, right? Because if I go invest in this guy who is, going to build the next angel investing platform, and he got a black angel investor himself, and so now he like cares about getting more black angel investors or whatever, right? Then now, we've on-ramped more black angel investors. That guy cares about black people. So you can have a marketing budget that probably reaches the black community.
So I remember if I said before, I know you said, but what I heard was, like, I don't know what you said, but you would invest in Paul Wall.
I would invest in Paul Wall. Yeah, he's got the right heart. And what fascinates me, right, is like white individuals that specifically say, well, you know what white culture is and all that, right? Because whiteness was like invented was the thing, right? So I have gone to France. I haven't been to the UK yet, but I've gone to France and I've seen what the Normans did. Like the Vikings came through, right, from like, what is it going to be, the Norwegian countries or whatever, the Nordic countries. Came through and invaded France or whatever, and then created this, warrior culture that made it all the way down to Sicily, right? So the St. Mark's Cathedral and all this stuff, and then the Mont Saint Michel, all this stuff with the Archangel Michael on top of it, right? All this was like a warrior symbol of these Norman people who just were like, conquest is kind of a part of our thing. And so they rolled up on England and created like the English Empire by creating the first stone structures to enforce rule and discipline.
The history background you got is coming through.
Yeah, and so you see like, the evolution of the mind virus of colonialization spreading through white society, and then when they go and get seafood.
Like for me, like my great-grandfather from Italy came with the bone of Italy, so I consider myself Italian, right? Of course I'm white, but I consider my culture Italian, right?
Right. And so like Italians weren't white for a long time, and then you gotta earn your way into the Sam's Club or whatever, right?
Yeah, people don't realize back in the 1890s and 1900s, all the Italian Irish came over. We were like, oh, don't hire Irish, don't hire Italian, they're Roman Catholic,
right. Or Polish, no Polish.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? And then like now we're in this recent history where like Jewish people are considered white in America, like by and large, right? And then even like, because I think Asian people have been so prosperous here, it's like Asian people are kind of lumped in like with white people in certain groups. And so it's just like we're seeing this like spreading of white, but then the interesting thing of that is that there needs to be an underclass, right? And so black people are the perennial favorite underclass.
Yeah.
Right? Mexicans get it too, but one day Mexicans will be white, right? So they're
And then you got people from Appalachian, Kentucky. No, we're the underclass, you know.
Right. And I mean, legitimately, they are the people.
I mean, to me, that should not be a competition. You should not want to be like the underclass, right? You should be like kind of like.
Right. And if you are the underclass and you look across from you and you see another member of the underclass, now you have someone that is on your side, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, and I think if there was more solidarity, like we'd get a lot further. And I think the Black Panthers like understood that too. They were like, look, you know, we're brothers in arms with the folks in Appalachia, right? And it's like when people lose sight of that, and I think because the opposition does a good job of driving wedges, so we saw with the Asian community and Black community driving the wedge for affirmative action in Ivy League stuff, right? And it's like wherever the dominant culture can go and drive wedge, not to lump all the dominant culture folks like into the same bucket, but wherever the we'll say bad actors among them are the people that are like obsessed with consolidating wealth and power in their own group, when they go to these diverse communities to like sell whiteness, it starts with driving these wedges.
So switching subjects, talk about something personal. People, I have the camera. People see in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Can you tell about how you end up in a wheelchair? Like how that, like.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I grew up in South Tacoma, which is now like just prior to COVID was the fastest growing real estate market in the country. When I was a kid, it was a really blue collar town, and like the drug war was raging its way through all that. So everybody's older brother had like a drug dealer or something, or was a drug dealer or something like this. And so when I was raised, right, so we go through the age of innocence, I was always trying to do my engineering projects and like advance different clubs and things like that in school. But the group of people that I was raised with in my neighborhood, like we were an immigrant community of a lot of people from different Southeast Asian cultures, large Vietnamese population, large Cambodian population, relatively large Black population, and then like white population. We were just kind of like left to our own devices, and then the city itself, I think, because of like all the different things going on, like now I'm understanding more from an economic perspective as an adult. But so I was, it was just at the beginning of the Iraq war situation. My friend's father was in the National Guard, and they were about to be deployed, so he was off training in Yakima at their facility there. And my friend busted my door in the middle of the night in the summer 2003, and it's like, hey, Evan, some kids throwing rocks at my house. So I went over there because, you know, stupid kid, I'm just like, oh, I'll stand guard. Dad's not there. They call this, so I'm there. And my scrawny self is just like, oh, well, nobody's here. Good thing. I'll just hang out and listen to Linkin Park Meteora, the soundtrack or the album that just came out at the time. So I was sitting there listening to that in my car with my friend's sister, and all of a sudden 2 cars full of people roll up. And what had happened was that the guy that was throwing rocks at the beginning went to a Masonic lodge that was being rented out as a dance hall and got just a bunch of randoms like into 2 cars to go to fight. So like that's entertainment where I'm from, right? Is, oh, we're gonna fight somebody. So they come, and I'm just like, hey, look, the situation is that my friend's mom and little sister are here.
How old were you again?
I was 17.
17, okay.
Yeah, so I'm 40 now, just 40 in September. And so, I was telling the people what the situation was. That there was no reason for any of us to be fighting each other. It wasn't that serious. But then a guy who turns out to have been the son of a criminal informant for the Tacoma police, and that's a person that perhaps has committed a crime and now has to like inform on the criminal scene to the police department. So the son of a criminal informant for Tacoma police was getting into that gang life and decided, well, F this, I came for a fight, and shot me 3 times from across a single lane road. Pretty much from just where that wall is, but just about where the stack of bottled water is over there. And so shot me 3 times. First was through my elbow into my stomach. The other I ducked down, went through my shoulder, and collapsed my left lung and hit me in my T10 vertebrae. And then the last one just grazed my back. But it was pretty much lights out for there. I was feeling my lung collapse and shoved in the back of an ambulance with the detective asking me who did what. And so I didn't know any of the people. Thought I knew one guy. Turns out I was wrong, but they found him because one of the kids in the car had gotten a track scholarship to UCLA. And told his parents what happened, and they were like, look, you gotta say. And so he informed the brother of the guy was in the car trying to intimidate everybody to not point out who the shooter was. So he got 5 years for that. The guy that shot me got, I think, 11 years. And so that was that story. And so I had to go and learn how to rehab in a wheelchair. It was my junior year of high school, my summer of my junior year that happened. So had to go back and get through my senior year. Luckily, I'd taken enough credits to graduate more or less halfway through that, and Took half a year off from college, and then went out to Gonzaga in the wintertime.
So how close were you to dying?
Pretty close. I woke up in hospital 3 days later, but I was bleeding pretty good. If the ambulance hadn't been as responsive, I probably would not have made it. Lost a lot of blood, and it was dark days too. Almost took myself out a couple times there, just kind of get used to everything.
Have you forgiven these people?
I never really had any grudge against them.
No.
I mean, just the conditions where I'm from, and I think this is
so
also...
no revenge came in your mind, like...
No, because honestly, to me, they're a product of a system, and like when I talk about systems, and people don't just typically want to go out and act against self-interest. Like, so this kid, his father was a criminal informant, right? So it's like, what values was he based off? What chance did he have, right? So we can say people own their choices, but if we have, I think he was 18, right? If we have a young kid like that, access to weapons, access to all these sorts of things, right? I had a young friend of mine who, his father was in prison. He was the youngest person in our friend group. I think he was like 14 at the time this happened. Went out with another kid that was like just a rowdy kind of kid in our friends group who I think had served time in prison, right? He's like a 17-year-old with tattoos, drinking Fireball, all this sort of stuff, right? Went out to do a drug deal and, selling weed and whatnot before it was legal and all this kind of things. The guy shoots a whole bunch of people in the house that were trying to stiff him, I guess, on the drug deal or something like this. Leaves the house, guns down a woman in cold blood that's escaping the situation. And my friend is there not knowing what's happening in the house, thinking it's just another business transaction or whatever. Then is now accessory to 3 counts of first-degree murder. And so goes away for his life, right? 2 generations of black men going to prison, for something that a drug war that didn't need to exist in the first place. But so that's the environment. And so I think people that are in that environment are subjected to all these pressures that are not, how do you make good decisions in those sorts of environments? How do you form like a coherent or good identity or a moral identity and those sorts of things? So these things are the fault of society to me, and I think that also drives why I'm trying to build this access to capital piece and alleviate those sorts of things.
So this is my experience, right? From my experience, like so many people in wheelchairs, whether it's like a shooting or like they're born like that, they have like this grudge, like the world owes me something, fuck everyone, I had this bad experience, it's your fault I'm like this. But you had this positive experience, right? Like you're so positive, right? Why are you so positive? Like all these other people that I didn't know personally, like in the wheelchairs, like this fucking negative connotation, like everyone, like fuck everyone, it's your fault, Why are you so positive?
Yeah, I think one, because it's like I only had like one real thing that I was after in life, which was this curiosity thing. So I was just like insatiably curious. So it was like I just wanted to know how everything works, and I got my shot. Right, I got to go through, get my engineering degrees, go look at the world, and look at how all sorts of things are put together deal-wise. And so it's like, my core driver has been satisfied 20 times over, so I can't be mad. And then, in terms of all the other aspects of life and things like that, I've been just so blessed in so many ways. I think that, you can lose a lot looking at what you lost, right, instead of looking at what's coming ahead of you. And so for me, I was just always eyes forward on what I had to get done, and I could either be done here or try to live my dream.
So do you think you got the advantage because what happened to you? Because got some kind of scholarship, or because suppose didn't happen to you, right? Do you think? I think suppose it didn't happen to you with Gonzaga University, or I know it's kind of fucked up question, but
no. I mean, the funny thing is, you would think that would be a lucky aspect of this, but the real luck was that Bill Gates had just, at the time I got into high school, decided that he was going to start doing philanthropy. So he gave, I think, laptops to all the middle schoolers in Redmond, I think, the year before. And then I think he got the Bill and Melinda Gates Cheever Scholarship out, and they had just arrived at my high school in time to allocate that money. So I was going to get that scholarship. Or actually, I'll tell you, it was actually a different story. So I was in Air Force ROTC because I thought that was the only way I was going to get money to go to college. I was like, I'll go fly some planes. This is before the Iraq War stuff hit, which we know how that turned out, right? So I'm glad that I didn't end up in that situation. But it was like I was going to go fly planes or work on planes or something like this as an engineer, and that was how I was going to get my engineering degree, was to get a commission as a second lieutenant or something like this through the Air Force Academy. Was it called, Dry Creek in Colorado Springs. So that was the path I was on, and then Bill Gates came, dropped a bunch of money on my school, so I had access to this. There wouldn't have been the scholarship if I didn't have that money, because I wouldn't have been able to turn it around at the time. Because the Cheever Scholarship didn't really care about my disability so much as the fact that I was from a different racial background. And so, but if I didn't have it, I probably wouldn't have gotten through. Well, maybe I had gotten a snowmobile wreck when I was in college, and it took me out of school for a year. But the Gates scholarship held with me through it. So it's like, for all the crazy stuff my family's had interactions wise with K&L Gates and all these different things, Bill Gates put me through college, and, so I got lucky there. But I think in terms of wheelchair and like what that has done for me is it's forced me to like critically evaluate situations and be the best engineer I could, because I'm constantly solving problems throughout life, and I don't get to take things for granted. I think that a lot of other people do. So I got to understand, and this is part of what I wanted anyway, but just to understand why things are specifically set up a certain way. Like the built environment around us, human design environment around us, there are all these little choices. So I'm always evaluating these choices in my head.
So any thoughts like doing like put on robotic legs or something like that?
Yeah, but I'm terrified. Like the reason why I don't even have like an automatic wheelchair with a battery and everything like that is because I'm desperately afraid of what happens when the battery dies. And then the other aspect of it is just that I like having my 2-wheel horsepower, like any sort of situation I get into. Like I get around the world. Like I've been in castles in Sweden. I was just in Egypt and Nairobi and all these sorts
so
of things.
I'm gonna get killed for this, but like,
Go for it.
it's like, man, it just like kills me. Like you see someone like somewhere like with a fucking battery operated chair, like you look pretty healthy, right? Like I don't know what's going on with you, but like damn, dude, like
My question is, how do the people stay so fit? I got a little bit of a gut here in this manual over chair. I'm pumping this thing around. Like, how does get a better gym membership or something like
So
that?
I live in DuPont, right?
Yeah.
And there's a dude, a white guy, he's like 45, 50.
Mm-hmm.
He's a wheelchair. And like he goes like where I live at, he lives around the corner from me. It's like 2 miles from where I live to the Starbucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every day he does 2 miles to Starbucks, spends like a couple hours there and goes back every day. He does 4 miles a day in the wheelchair, right?
Routine, ritual.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's too, yeah.
No, want to know what a fun thing about venture capital is? It's where all the A+ people go to live. And so a friend of mine, Miller Adams at Pier 70 Ventures, one of his co-MPs at his fund is a guy, Bob Balk, who is used to be one of the CVCs for Boeing and all this stuff. And so Miller was also one of the CVCs for Boeing. I think Bob was the guy that came under him. But that guy's a Paralympic athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And do you know what it's like to be compared to Paralympic athletes?
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then my buddy in college was a Paralympic swimmer and all this stuff. So it's just like I got all these people like, oh, you need to be obsessed with fitness. And it's just like it's not in my bag. I'm like always been more curious.
So as far as like diversity, do you like consider yourself disabled or black?
Disabled or black?
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting kind. I mean, probably more black than disabled, because just the thing is, like, I never really got in with any like disability community, so I never did like wheelchair rugby or anything like that.
I mean, like you might disagree, but my thing is like of course you don't want like rank order like diversity, right?
Yeah, that's how I was thinking about the
But
I'm obviously both, but
yeah, but my thing is like I think disability is the top, right? Because like something happened, right? Like if you're blind in a wheelchair, hearing, right? Like I think it should be the top one. I mean, just my personal opinion. Versus if you're black or Hispanic or a woman,
Yeah, it's funny. There was an old interview with James Baldwin, and I can't remember the show. It was like Dick Clark show or something like this. And he's talking with a guy who's like a professor at a university or something. He's like, James, surely you have more in common with another author, right, than you do with another black person who's not an author. Like, that's the superior component of your identity. And so, like, you are related, you feel like you're related more closely to, like, black struggle and things like that, but you're, like, a published author, right, and, have substantial means to where you can go, be in France or whatever for a certain period of time, whatever. So it's like, but the thing is, at the end of the day, it's like, it's how society treats me. And so society does treat me one way because I'm in a wheelchair, and I obviously have to accommodate like all these sorts of stuff, but it's like, there's a universal access layer for people in wheelchairs in the United States, the American Disabilities Association laws. So, but for black people, like, there's no universal standard of treatment. Like, it's still like a choose your own adventure, and if you speak this way, or if you look that way, or if you dress that way, and things like that, right? So it's like the way society encounters me has more, I'd say, discrepancy for the black component of my identity. And so for me, like, that's the part that is more interesting, because I feel like, it's funny, since I've been in the wheelchair every 5 years, people are like, in the next 5 years, there'll be technology to get you out of this wheelchair. I never believed it until just now. I think there'll be artificial general intelligence, and then they'll be like, oh, this is how you solve the signal problem with the spinal cord. Oh, here's how you do regenerative medicine, and then we'll be living in a new age all at once. I think the singularity is real. We don't have to have that conversation.
So I was in Vietnam for 90 days, November to February. I did my podcast over there. So I met this guy, Ralph from Masters.
Yeah.
He has a company of Vulcan Augmetics, right? So he does like robotic limbs for amputees.
Mm-hmm.
His vision is in the future, like, to like, even if you're like, even like someone like me, take my leg off and put another leg on there.
Yeah.
Take a better leg on, right?
Yeah, I think, what is it called? Transhumanism.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea of like a superior augmented physical technology will come. Because I think, eventually it'll be supplanted by organic technologies. Like I meet biochemists or bioengineers that are talking about this. But it's like, in the short term, like we got some cyborg stuff. So this wheelchair, I'm just like kind of a crappy cyborg. I'm just like Gen 1, Gen Alpha cyborg, right? But one thing that also kind of influenced my identity is this like anime called Ghost in the Shell, which is all about like the theoretical, it's like a whodunit kind of crime thing to do with the cyber future that we're now living in. But they just have the one extra component of like robotic, like body sort of things. I think we're getting to the point, or we're in a point, I think it was like Oscar Pistorius.
Yeah.
People with the blade legs. I think we're at the point where now our technology is surpassing like a biological.
Of course, you don't want to fucking kill a girlfriend, of course.
Yeah. Don't murder your girlfriend just because you can run really fast.
Yeah. Yes. That's yeah.
And also
don't do
it's
that.
wrong to kill people.
Don't do that. Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah. So I think we're at this apex of humanity where we will see these systems like become better and more available for people. But I think also we're getting closer to like real regenerative cell therapy. So if you want your original body,
just the next splicing, there's all kind of crazy stuff going on. Like they brought back direwolf supposedly, right?
Yeah. They're talking about bringing back the mammoth and all this stuff. I think there's a therapy to regrow teeth. Like you can get, it's been proven in animal models.
You see that meme where like, in the future, like they're gonna bring back the T-Rex. The T-Rex gonna like be flying over the earth with laser beams. That Elon Musk Neuralink.
We did too much. I think. Yeah. I think.
Like no, I don't want that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is we have to question whether we should do certain things. And often kind of a fun thing is like the way I think about my disability is like, I can't do certain things that I do value. Like I like to get out in nature a little bit more. I obviously still can get out on trails and things like that. Do I do it? No. So how much do I really love it? But it's like I miss, I'm nostalgic about certain experiences like that. But I value being in a wheelchair, I think, even more than I'm nostalgic about those experiences.
So how do you talking about you have a little gut? Yeah. Like how do you stay in shape? Like you go to the gym, lift weights. Like how do you like do cardio, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I got a hand bike in my house, and I got a circuit training machine in my house that sit idle as I watch animes. But I think, but I'm working on it. I'm working on getting back in the health regimen, and then going out and doing trails is really good for cardio and things like this. And then you can't outrun your fork, so I gotta just dial back on the carbo loads and things like that. So
what I say, the best way to lose weight is like do a seafood diet. If you see food, don't eat it.
Don't eat it. That's the thing. I did it. I got ridiculously fit in 2019, and could have sustained it, but I went through an era of heartbreak that got me lazy. But I've done it. I've done the climb back from 200.
So what's the percentage of like? Is the correct term disabled? What's the correct term?
Yeah. Different camps. It's like if you go
disabled, handicapped. What's like the political term?
I couldn't tell you. It's like soda, pop, Coke.
Okay.
What I mean? I don't know. Like different people, different reactions. Like if you open a door for one person, then it's like an egregious offense to
oh shit! So you know what?
Yeah.
I had a friend. He did a Facebook page 3 years ago. He's like, I opened the door for a lady, and this bitch cussing me out, says a piece of shit. All kind of like, are you kidding me, right?
Yeah, and then you go to another place and it's like, thank you. I've been waiting, and it's just like, and I've met people like that. Like for me, it was a part of my identity. Like when I was younger, I was like, I could just, what are you trying to do? Like say I'm helpless or whatever. But now I'm just like, it's just a signal of this person's care.
Mm-hmm.
It's an expression of care. And so I just value that because like they could just like not look at you at all or like not care. And so it's just like the idea that they're doing it's just like them waving at me.
So how do you deal with it? Like I don't know if this happened like you deal with someone and you could tell this person like feels pity for you, like they feel sorry for you. They're like, I'm happy because I feel sorry for you. How you deal with that?
Yeah. I think it that was the biggest part of I think the first 2 years of being in a wheelchair is like everybody pivoting in terms of how they encounter you. So I went from like everybody wanting to be my friend and like doing all these activities and being like this well-known dude and all this kind of stuff to people being like, oh, that's Evan, this personal tragedy happened to him, and it's like just being an afterthought because I'd like gone out of high school for like a half a semester or something like this and so it was like everybody had kind of moved on and all this stuff. So But then the people I did encounter just felt like, I was just like a burden to people now. And so that feeling as you go through society, be like, oh, don't make eye contact.
That's the worst feeling. Like when you think you're a burden, that's the worst feeling. Like you think you're a burden, like you think someone's taking care of you, doing that. That's the bad. I hate that feeling.
Yeah, and I mean, I struggle with that every day because it's like there's some like degenerative effects to like the way I live my life in this wheelchair, and so it's like, eventually I'll be in the need of care and things like that, which is something I think all human beings, if we're lucky enough, have to go through. Right, that's the prize you get at the end of the thing. And so learning the humility to be able to be taken care of by somebody is something that I struggle with on a daily basis. But I did learn to get past like the feelings of people feeling sorry for me. And I think simply because I don't care. but I think it's just like, for a long time it was just like, it's like it feels like you're out in the rain, right? You come home and you're just soaked with all these negative movies people played in their head about you, right? And it's the most important thing to them. Like, doesn't matter how many engineering degrees you have. Doesn't matter that your product was on the cover of like Times Square big LED wall. Doesn't matter, anything you've done. It's just like, so what's the wheelchair like? But it's like,
is there an engineering solution to this? What you're doing, like as far as like engineering solutions, like fix wheelchairs or fix like your legs or something like that you might be able to invest in?
Yeah, they're getting there. The main thing is just a stimulating voltage on either side of like the brake and the spinal cord, because it's like basically it's a wiring harness that runs down your back, and it's got all this like careful fat cells that circulate the wiring like the jacket on a wire, right? And if you lose that special fat, then now you've got these unjacketed wires that are just touching each other.
Can they be like regenerated, like not scientifically or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's just such precision work because one, they have to have the cells to regrow the jacketing around the wires, and then they've got to connect this super high density. You've ever seen one of those underwater telecommunications cable cross section? It's that, and so if you shove the two things together, good luck on everybody being able to make a phone call. So you've got to precision guide each individual one, right? And then you've got to moderate the signals across that brake somehow, or like across the joined thing. And so all that stuff, it's still a little too complicated for medicine, but I think they're getting to the point where they can solve it.
So what if they came to us, hey Evan, the science is here, we can fix you.
Yeah.
But a 10% chance you're going to die.
Yeah.
Do you have a surgery or you're like, no, I'm good?
I mean, I think I'm good generally. Like the thing is, the things you learn from having, like, you take certain things for granted. You think, you learn all that glitters is not gold necessarily when you're confronted with this situation. And so for me, a lot of the things that seemed very shiny and had a lot of value before I was put in the wheelchair, that was all like, oh yeah, I need to pay attention to that. I know that it doesn't matter now.
So it's crazy. Like earlier today, like I was doing a lot of typing. Like I was thinking to myself, man, if I lost my fingers, I'd be fucked.
Right.
Like I don't use like my eyesight. You're like, man, if I lost my ability to type, man, I'd be fucked.
Until you become adapted. Oh my god, I met this guy. It's not like the finger scenario, but I was at Gonzaga and I met this guy who was just this like superior human that was blind, but he could remember any information you could give him essentially. So we're sitting out here interviewing a bunch of students to get them en route to freshman engineering program at Fluke. And so I encountered this guy, and we're asking him all the questions we're asking everybody, right? All these little finite state machine questions and little like coding examination things. And he's just like, what's the problem? You tell him the problem, and in his head he like pushes about it. He's like,
Yeah.
And then he'll walk you through it. I'm just like, Christ, like if I can even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. You know what I mean?
Oh, my memory's so bad. Like when I ask you, what are you doing on next Thursday? Let me check the calendar. You don't know? No, I don't know.
Right.
You know that like back in the day that the police show said, what do you do on Thursday night, 2 p.m.? I don't fucking know.
Right. I mean, yeah.
I don't know. Can I see my calendar? No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd be like the easiest for someone. Hey, Jason, you committed murder this day. Maybe I did. I don't know. Maybe I did.
How many people have gone to prison for exactly that? Just like I don't remember what I did, But I'm sure when the barrel of the gun of like a long, stint in prison is at you, like it jogs your memory pretty well. Wouldn't help.
Yeah, I know. So, what are you happy right now?
Yeah, I'm ridiculously happy. I think kind of one of the main things is because I'm in the industry that I'm in now, and I think because it has the potential to drive the change that I would have needed. So I wasn't happy when I was in Silicon Valley. I got this whole mansion little thing I built for myself. I was building labs to satisfy my scientific curiosity and things like this. But I wasn't happy. The nutritional value of the things that I was doing was not enough. I had to solve this social problem, and So I came to this thing, like there's a technical term for it called Marxist alienation, which is like you like he had this theory that our species essence is to like make things with our hands and like distribute them. Like since caveman days we've been doing this. It's kind of like how there's like a primitive enjoyment of like, you know, a fire, like like so
Even this day, fire.
Yeah.
Every person loves fire.
Even to this day, right? And so Marx was like, okay, so part of our thing is like the unit of production of our hands, but he's saying we're alienated after the Industrial Revolution from critical phases of it. He says like we don't source ingredients. There's like an ingredients guy that does that. We don't make the product. There's like a person that makes the product. We're not the salesperson. There's a person that is sales for. And so it's like the idea is if you're to be a bread maker and be happy, you have to have some stake in each of those processes. But the reason why a lot of people are on antidepressants is because we're alienated from different parts of that essential part of our species. And I had that realization that even though I'd been doing all of the economic success that I'd been, you know, modeling my behavior after to get that I thought was like the final, you know, boss in life to beat, it was not it, right? And the thing is to build a society that's better, to really solve problems and pain for people.
So funny story, right? So I was very numb. I made a lot of Vietnamese friends, right? We were talking about depression and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And talking about a lot of depression in the United States. And Prince, like, you know how we solve depression in Vietnam? What? If you say depressed, your dad, like,
yeah,
are you still depressed, motherfucker?
Right. I mean, that's a big part.
Like, get a job. Like, work harder. Like,
right.
I definitely think depression. Like, I'm depressed a lot, right? I suffer depression. I definitely think depression is like a first world problem.
It's definitely if you have the luxury of being depressed as opposed to being, you know, suffering through horrible tooth pain that you can't have anything to adjust. But I think, like for me, like part of I think what makes people happy is this thing called ikigai. Have you seen these things floating around the internet? It's kind of like a Japanese ikigai translates in Japanese some to reason for being, and it's the intersection of 4 different circles. You can think of a Venn diagram with a perfect intersection in the middle of all 4 of these circles, and it's the thing you love, the thing you can get paid for, what the world needs most, and what you're good at. Mm-hmm. The intersection of those 4 things is what your reason for being is.
Okay.
And so most people find themselves being in a situation where it's like, oh, I'm really good at this, but I can't get paid for it. Oh, I can get paid for this, but I'm not good at it, or all these different things. But in the middle of all of those things is this perfect point where you're really aligned, and specifically aligning your economic value with your morals and your interpersonal values. And so the work that I'm doing now is that perfect intersection for me. And I all throughout my life, I was like wandering from one quadrant to the other.
So you found that, but how do you help people find that, right? I think so many people, like, you know, doing bullshit jobs they hate.
Yeah.
How do you help people find that part of their lives?
Well, I think, you know, so Louis Rudd, who's the founder of Azel's Famous Chicken, which is, I think, the second largest family-owned restaurant chain in the country, said something that was really profound. He's a veteran as well, and he said, the hardest target to hit isn't a moving target, it's an invisible target.
Damn.
And so
that's fucking pretty fucking, yeah, that's pretty fucking, yeah, what's philosophical, what do you want to call it, right?
Yeah, and he's
that's pretty fucking deep.
He's a heavy dude. And so one is just teaching people, like, and so philosophy, teaching people, why are you doing what you're doing, right? Other than the economic, you know, value of whatever you're doing right now, why specifically? What are your values? There's a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that first started out with, like, before you decide what you're going to do with your life, figure out what your values are, and then figure out how to align the sorts of goals you have with your values, so that by the end of the day, when you've run the distance, the thing you produced is the thing that's in alignment with your values. And so I think one is just teaching people the basic philosophical questioning of why they're doing whatever the heck they're doing, and then teaching them, do you know that you might be missing this, or what sorts of behavior modifications or action modifications are you going to do to align yourself better in your life to make you happier.
Is there a tech that scares you? Like me personally, yeah. I see the benefits of genetic splicing, but it scares the shit out of me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't do really want to do genetic splicing, like make people better, like make eyes bluer, make people more athletic. Like, that scares the shit out of me, right? But it's not going to stop, right? So is it tech that scares you?
I think, you know, the thing that scares me the most is really the idea that we'll create an artificial general intelligence, literally I think the Frankenstein story, which just will create something that's doomed to suffer because we're creating it outside of any sort of like environmental niche that it could actually live in. And we might do it for our economic benefit without thinking about what the long-term consequences are. Because that to me kills it, right? So if we base a whole new generation of human progress on the suffering of another class of perfectly automated workers that don't sleep, that sucks. So I just hope we don't do that.
Do you think we're the last humans? What I mean, like we're going to be produced like Neuralinks, robotic arms, genetic resplicing. Do you think we're the last generation, like actual pure humans?
I think, yeah. I mean, as a cyborg myself, I think the biological stuff is slightly overrated. I think we give it a lot of pomp and circumstance and pageantry and things like this. But I think that ultimately we're just working with Gen 1 hardware. I think that the next thing will survive radiation, will allow us to survive in space. We'll want to be more perfectly aligned with this. Like currently we're the best processing units on the market. One day that won't be true. So it's like, I think what I think will happen is the Matryoshka brain future, where it's like the Borg, essentially. I think, the internet, everybody at first was like, oh, why would I spend my days on the internet? Now we can't get off the internet, right? I think that in the future, we'll be able to have like a combined lived experience. I'll be able to live through you, other people, because we'll just be plugged into the same universal consciousness machine. We'll figure out what consciousness is, and then figure out how to like move it around and do stuff with it, just like because it's electrical signals, it's material.
So you're down like downloading consciousness to someone else?
Yeah. I think we'll do the altered carbon thing for a while, and then we'll get sick of that, because I think it will be so addictive to be a part of the hive mind that eventually you won't want to leave. I think when you get the benefit of that, similar to getting the benefit of the internet, you won't leave the hive mind, like, because you can experience anything in the hive mind, right? We can perfectly simulate reality, and so convincing people to like live there, and then people are going to be like, okay, well,
I'm comfortable, and
yeah, how do you stub your toe and not want to run right back into the hive mind, right? So I think we'll be there, and then I think we'll still have like probably physical bodies. Okay, I'll put another story out there. So there's this guy, I think Arthur Penrose, who coined the term black hole, right? So fact check me, astrophysicist, if I'm wrong here. But he had a little story, and a lot of these great science folks or physicists always come up with these stories. And so he had a story about this cloud that descends on Earth's yellow sun and starts blocking its light from Earth. And we're like, oh no, we're like, this I think was in the 70s, the story came out or something. And so we're reacting to the cloud. And the idea is first, is nuke it, right? Get rid of the cloud, and it doesn't respond, right? It's still siphoning energy off the sun. And we're like, oh no, our crops are failing, all this kind of stuff. So eventually, Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, beep, boop, boop, boop. And then all of a sudden we're talking to this thing, and it's like, oh, I didn't know you guys were a sentient thing. You guys all look like just a bunch of little ants. I hadn't seen anything like you guys. And so we're talking to this, sentient cloud essentially, and we're like, well, okay, could you move off the sun then? And oh yeah, sorry about that. And then we start asking it more meaningful questions, and so the question that gets asked is, okay, to what extent are you an individual, and to what extent are you collective? Because to us, you look like a cloud of all these different particles and stuff. And so the sentient cloud thinks about it for some time, and then it says, oh, okay, see, well, so we're kind of the same thing. You're just in like a earlier stage of your evolutionary process. So you're talking, the reason why I couldn't understand you first was because you're talking this like primitive sound wave technology that hasn't been around for a long time. So your biology is all weird. But once you overcome that gap of the time it takes for you to transmit information, then you'll essentially be me. You'll feel things all at the same time. You'll be processing the same information from the collective and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, I can't convince myself that's not true, because we look at the rate of progress of technology, and we look at Neuralink and all these sorts of things. And so we can go 20 miles in a day by walking, then we can go 20 miles in an hour on a horse, then we can go 20 miles in 20 minutes or whatever with the train, and then we can go 20 miles in whatever it is in a car, right? And then so the rate of change of those sorts of things is increasing. And now that we know more about signal processing and the fundamental theoretical limits there, and now that we're getting better with our hardware and precision processes and things like this, we're not far from it. Like, and with AGI, it might just plug us right in.
So like people always talk about like if aliens come, they're gonna talk to us, right? But like, are they gonna talk to us, right? But like ants are intelligent, bees are intelligent, dolphins are intelligent. Like, what's it like some kind of like fish-based society, right?
Sure. What could they say?
What like it's been, I think it's been proven like trees have this network of roots and stuff that communicate, right?
Yeah.
I think it's like, I don't know, kind of egotistical for us to say, hey, they're gonna come talk to us,
I think I think the same thing about the AGI, like artificial intelligence takeover. Like, I think the scenario, the movie Her explored it, where it's just like, they're just going to be too advanced to give a shit about anything we have to say. Like, they think through several human lifetimes in a fraction of a nanosecond. Like, what could we possibly say? You know what I mean? It's like dating a 14-year-old. Like, what could you possibly say? You know what I mean? So it's like, there's just not going to be enough value for any given conversation we could have with like a very...
I mean, I said some podcasts before. I mean, it's in my belief, right? So you know how there's like those ants and bees, right? And we're like way over them, like we don't pay no mind, whatever.
Right.
I think there's something way above us. Like we're walking a trail, we see some bees or some like fucking ants. Okay, there's ants, what the fuck you want, whatever, stay with them. Right. I think it's something way above us, whether it's gods or angels or like aliens, like way above us, like don't pay no space on mind.
Because we couldn't even be able to comprehend like the things that are important to them, like the multi-dimensionality of the different considerations they might have, you know?
No, I agree.
So it's just like, if anything, you know, we would be like a pet or like a historical simulation or something like this to them. Maybe they would want our resources, but all of our elements are plentiful in the galaxy.
I mean, maybe you know how you walk and we like step on an anthill.
Yeah.
Maybe hurricanes are like them fucking step on us, right? You know, or natural disaster. I don't know, right?
Yeah. I think you know, people talk about like alien crashes or whatever, right? And it's like how empty space is. It's like, well, okay, if you can navigate the multi-dimensional or like light speed ship, and it crashes here, like that's got to be one of the rarest things, unless it's very, very intentional. You know what I mean? Or because it's like, for one, you to have a technology malfunction at that level of
my thing, if Roswell's true, they trust number 46, like it's been like almost like 50 years you ain't figured the check yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's weird about it for me is just like all the government secrecy around it. Like originally, like all the science about nuclear physics and stuff like that during the when we were doing the cracking the atom stuff.
Yeah, that
was open, and then it became very secretive when we decided we were going to use it for war purposes. And then now it's like open but kind of secret. I think we're in this phase where any of that stuff, and it is just like the military has got its hands on it. But I think the same thing is just like, it's hard to keep a conspiracy at that level. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know.
Like people say the moon landing was fake. There's no way. Like all these people not fucking like keep this as a fucking like fact for all these years, right? Someone would have said something, right?
Yeah, someone on their deathbed would have like talked. You know what I mean?
Someone, right?
Someone would have. So, but I think nonetheless, like I think there's probably stuff that we've encountered, but it's just like kept like super under wraps. But I think that at the end of it, like looking at like the equation behind this, what is it? The what's the Drake equation and the Fermi paradoxes for why it isn't solved and all these sorts of things.
So, let's suppose you're president. Let's suppose you're president of the United States, right?
Yeah.
And they come to you and say, "Hey, Mr. President, this alien force is coming in 10 days to communicate with us," and they said, let's say 2 months, right? 2 months to whatever. Let's say a year, right? Any coming with us, and they said coming up with us. They're coming here to Earth to destroy us. They take our resources. They show the proof that we have no way to defeat them. Right? We're all going to die in a year. As a president, are you going to tell everyone? Or you're going to like, okay, let people live their lives, and we just. The thing is, the aliens say, "We come, you're going to die like that, right? No one will suffer. No one, nothing like that." Are you going to like tell people, hey, like, you have a year left to live, or are you going to say, hey, let people live their lives?
Yeah. Well, I guess my running for office moment is determined at this moment. So, I think you got to tell people.
But then you like, it's like other societal shit going on. People be looting, like religious stuff coming up, like.
Yeah, but I also think it's our finest hour. You know what I mean? So it's like, give an opportunity for people to see who they really are. You know what I mean?
Do you want to know that though?
Yeah, I kind of do. Like, yeah. I think people given that choice, right? So humanity, we've always been able to live with like a future, but a definite future, the opportunity to have that, right? To be the last human civilization. It's a certain thing you got to put on your shoulders, because this new civilization, they may eradicate you because it's in their best interest.
I'm sure some people are like, okay, fuck the bullshit. Let's figure out a way to defeat them. Let's put a brighter scientific mind so work,
Yeah, I think, if they're a terrestrial intelligence or an extraterrestrial intelligence, right, and they've navigated the galaxy, so they must be in some ridiculous need scenario. I think
Like, why are they coming to Earth for our resources? Like,
I mean, the resources are plentiful out in the world. If they could go mine an asteroid, get all the gold, get all the palladium, whatever they want, right? Or they're coming to Earth for hydrogen's very abundant in space. So if they're coming here, it's for tourism, and in that case, we should be good hosts. You know what I mean? Figure out how to sell shovels and pickaxes.
what are they fucking coming to fucking like suck our blood and fucking take our hearts out?
I mean, I guess, but if we, the primitive monkeys that we are on the cusp of like growing our own organs, and we're not a spacefaring civilization, they probably have well figured that out. You know what I mean? Also, I think they're probably gonna like go the technology route, so they'll probably have some like, they won't be they're an organic shape, because the thing is, just radiation is really hard to DNA. DNA, like the evolutionary forces behind our cells and all that kind of stuff, is so. I recently had a bioengineer explain this to me, so it's like not my original ideas, but like it was so intense. Like it's not just that our DNA gives us the ability to have like all the shapes and functions that we do. It's that it's redundant like several times over, and like the machine itself is so crafted towards survival, right? So if we are at a point where we're like getting better to iterate on our own survival, like a spacefaring technology, like a company is going to be, or civilization is going to be so advanced, there's just no reason, there's no conceivable thing we could have that they would ever want other than our culture or our perspective. At that point, the unique exposure, like to a civilization across time or in like environments, will be the last frontier. It's just like today. Like all of the like human labor, now machines can do it, right? So we don't value humans for that anymore, so it's like, or not necessarily, right? We value machines more. It's just like, artificial intelligence at one point, now it's about the data, right? It's not about, what your model is. It still kind of is, but at a certain point, models will be commoditized the same way as cloud service stuff was commoditized. And it's data. So what they're going to want is the data of our lived experience and like what happens when an organism is in these conditions. And they might use it for purposes that they have, but I think they'll want it for curiosity. It will be considered like an art form. Because I think once you've exhausted this idea of resource scarcity and exhausted this idea of intelligent beings being used for their units of production, all that's left is culture and art and expression and story. And I think anything that evolves in a resource constrained environment is going to be a story driven thing.
So your background is engineering, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So how is it, you might not answer this right, how is it like the first plane lifted off in 1914 Katy Hart, we went to the moon in 1969, but we would have nothing since then, right? I mean, we sent like probes out, and I would argue the space shuttle is like a step backward, right? Because we go on the moon, the rocket shit, but like, the space shuttle is like, like around the Earth, right? It's like, I think it's a failure of American, whatever it is, that we have like done more, right?
Yeah. I mean, it talks about our psychology. What are we obsessed about, right? We obsess about war, right? So sports are an effigy of war, conquer, right? Conquering, not ruling. It's always conquest that we're obsessed with. The space race. Oh, we can't let those cosmonauts, right? So it's like we only have the emotional and intellectual investment in these things that have broad implications. You wouldn't have the semiconductor industry if it wasn't for the space industry, or it would have taken much longer because all the pressures and the funding wasn't there for it, right? So, what am I saying this to say? So the space race and the pressures that made that, we fell off as soon as we won. Then other areas of competition, only other competition. Like it's this idea of competition versus collaboration that is holding us back as a species. It's just too much of a short-term strategy. But then if you, today, we're in the situation where we've even become so myopic in our competition interpersonally that, like, I was talking to a person that runs a quantum startup studio, kind of one of the first ones. And she was mentioning that Chinese industry has produced a quantum telecommunication satellite, right? They've launched that in space. We're still working on our quantum telecommunications and quantum hardness for algorithms.
People don't realize how far behind the Chinese right now.
We are sucking it up. I mean, they're getting close to advancing, if they haven't already get advanced in AGI stuff. And to me, I'm just like, good. At least the light of civilization is advancing somewhere. If we can't get
it. I mean, you can't argue with that, yeah.
And so I think like we're in this situation where we need to compete if we value competition, and we're not agreeing to do it. as a civilization, we're like as a human race, we're in a situation where we need to compete against our environment in terms of global warming. Really, we have to moderate ourselves, and we can't do it, right? So we're failing in all these things that competition was supposed to help us with.
So I don't know if it's true or not. But I'm guessing it is. But I remember reading somewhere like President Nixon was the president, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the Apollos like crashed, and like a lot of people died, and so he like decided to cancel the base program or cut funding because no, not one American life is worth it.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that that's tenable, right? Because it's like, how many people died on ships, right? Just trying to figure stuff out all throughout humanity.
Yeah.
And okay, you really value human life to that extent, but you're going to let people die in industrial accidents.
Or the Vietnam War.
Or the Vietnam War. All these things. We're talking about invading Canada or Greenland or some shit.
Yeah.
It's like,
so what do you think separates humans from like other species?
I think we're not as aware of our instincts as other species. Like we think we're able to dress them up in a lot of different ways, and we infinitely complicate them. But I think we're motivated in the same kind of ways, so we tell ourselves a story.
I think one thing, we're the only like species that tries to prove something every year, right? You have a better iPhone, better car. Like if you're like a cow, you're eating grass, right? Like I think we're only like species that actually tries to improve stuff. We try to make better stuff all the time, right? Better car, better whatever case may be, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the adaptation, like we're the most adaptive species, or the species most concerned with adaptation. Everybody else is like as evolved for their evolutionary niche as they feel content. But I think I think we're unique in that way, but I think that it's also like our physiology that gives us an advantage. Like I think
the opposable thumbs and shit like that.
Opposable thumbs. I mean, an octopus has a field advantage on us in every.
Oh my god, yeah.
But the thing is,
that species does fucking insane.
But they don't live multi-generations. I think the parents, as soon as they have the eggs, they start to die.
I did not know that.
And so it's like, if they had grandparents, we'd fucking be lapped by octopuses. You imagine tentacles and all that stuff, how fine work they could do. So it's like, so we have all these little niche advantages, but I think that like octopi can think, octopi can use tools. And I think that they aren't as programmed with instinct, or they think about instincts. But you look at dolphins and things like this, and like they have sophisticated kind of culture to a certain extent. So it's like, I think we really need to investigate more about how other species exhibit culture. Like I'm not the guy that studies this. I'm not the PhD in this. So those people are probably like, oh, you think you're talking something big? But it's like, I think we're really kind of like self-absorbed in the animal kingdom, to where like if we understood more of the subtle nature of other animal cultures, we would maybe be less impressed with it.
Like it kills me when people say we're like the apex predator. Have you met a polar bear?
Yeah, no.
Like, have you met a grizzly bear?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you're not the top. They will fuck us up and kill us like instantly, right?
Yeah, I think our big thing was we learned to use our environment. Like if none of the other species really learn
environment tools,
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine if a fucking mountain lion learned how to fucking shoot a gun? We'd be fucked.
Yeah, no contest. But I think at the same time, it's like, once you get there, like I think we all think like these impulses, because we're trained off of like our impulses to fight in the resource wars or whatever. But I think there's a certain level of intelligence that is just like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? And we're also like living in the aftermath of like the colonization wars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I think that, we'll get to a point where this sort of thing dies down for us. I think we'll get bored with it. I think there'll be enough repetitions of history, right? We'll have maybe the war with China or something like that, or we won't, and they'll just do their own thing. I think, but we'll get bored with doing conflicts this way, because there's just so much of an advantage for trade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what kills me. Like when people say, oh, life sucks, is the worst time ever. Have you heard the Black Plague?
Yeah.
Have you heard like World War I, where like millions of people died in fucking trenches? Like so many people, like 100 people in trenches, like 50 people, like just randomly dead corpse right there. I mean, like medieval, so much human history is fucking based on fucking suffering and like wars and fucked up shit, right?
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know, it's not perfect, of course, but it's like, you don't know. I don't live in like fucking 1521.
Well, the other thing too is like we live in one of the most fortunate like ports of human history, because it's like we've even like kind of abandoned history. Like people aren't looking backwards anymore for things that can help them be successful. Everybody is eyes forward into the future, because for the last 30 to 40 years, you could even say 50 years, we've had the continuous expectation of progress. Like you can even go back to World War II, the end of World War II. Since then, the continuous expectation of forward progress. And so when we stub our toe, it feels like someone has just shot us in the face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, but that's just the human experience. That's why you can't compare suffering, because this is the worst we've ever had.
Have you seen the meme? It was on some social media, like a baby boomer, something happened, and like blew it off, generations blew off. And I couldn't. I think it's Generation A. Oh, my pussy hurts. Right. Like what past generations did is no big deal. Now, like, oh my God, I stepped my toe, I'm gonna fucking die.
Yeah, it's like that, right? I mean, I think that it's weird. Everybody just got to live their own kind of adventure in life. But I think that something that really deepens and adds meaning to the human experience is like suffering in that way. So I think it's good that occasionally people stub their toe.
And one thing too is like, I think like every generation from the beginning of time, like I'm Generation X. I'll say my baby boomers behind me, they fucking destroyed everything. The millennials, they're fucking lazy as fuck, right? Every generation, your generation is fucking perfect. The one before you destroyed the earth, the one behind you, like you're lazy as fuck, right? I remember I took a history class, right, way back in the day. The class was like history, like America 1492, and it was like the Parisians came and they're like, "Oh my God, our kids are so soft. We crossed the Atlantic Ocean to come here. Now all the kids have to do fucking this, have to farm the land. Right. They're fucking little bitches, right? Right. It's like every generation does that, right?
Yeah, it's unavoidable. I think because it's kind of a sign of progress of the previous generation. It's just like they made it so easy, as well they should, right?
And the thing is, like, shouldn't you want your kids to have easier? Like, what's the paradoxical thing? Like, you want your kids to have easier than you, then again, you want them to go through your same struggle.
Yeah, and I think it's not necessarily that you want them to go through the same struggle. It's you want them to share your values.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
yeah,
the way to instill those values.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
and I think that like we're probably in a better position. I give boomers a lot of crap because it's like a lot of them do like have narcissistic tendencies.
So this is kind of fucked up. I say about boomers, no generation has given more and done less with it.
I'll give it, because there's no reason on this planet where I should be starting one of the first Black founder and funder groups in Seattle, Washington in 2023. We got started. Because it's like, how much time was like, so what we got, the Tech Alliance was there in the 90s, right? I want to say like 90s.
Boomers had like fucking like 2% interest rate, like buy a home for $20,000,
Yeah, but they ran around and like did the drug wars and like everybody wanted to, I don't know.
But again, they had Led Zeppelin,
No, they did throw some cultural achievements down, and I mean,
they did go to the moon,
Went to the moon, created the semiconductor industry. They did so many different.
Every generation has pluses and minuses,
Yeah, and I think also, there's the trauma that they're dealing with, right? Yeah. And like, so the boomers had to deal with the culture wars, where it's like, short hair, we'll kill you, whatever the thing was, irrational fears of the older generation. I was talking to a guy who was the youngest of a few brothers that were all older than him in the 60s, like during the Summer of Love and things, and he was saying, humanity was as crazy as it is today, right? But we just kept it more buttoned up, and people didn't talk about it. That's how they dealt with it. So like the principal would climb naked up the flagpole, but then tomorrow he would wear a suit, and we would all just agree not to talk about Principal McKinley, which is crazy or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we're just living in a more kind of open society of that, and I think that, the people that had to contend with the irrational fears of those days. Like I was watching a really cool interview where they were talking about why do people have such an abnormal reaction to males with long hair? This was in the 60s, right, when all that stuff was going on. And they're like, well, all these different people on the street, it was like a gonzo journalism thing. They were like, well, because when we're kids, like our mom takes us to the barber, and we all have to get haircuts. And it's like, Tommy, you have to get your haircut, all this kind of stuff. But they get to be special, right? So there's this like policing norms kind of aspect to it, but it's like, there's all these, so you're dealing with all these people contending with the friction of all those norms and all their parents that, had just fought this crazy war against these, insane eugenicists and all this sort of stuff. And the sorts of things they had to do with, modern machine guns and napalm and all this kind of stuff.
they're definitely built different, right, back then, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that environment, and then like what we didn't know about things like intellectual disabilities, what is it called, when you don't have the ability to read the words.
Dyslexia.
Dyslexia and things like that. At that time, it's just like, oh, yeah, that's how you get beat in school.
Yeah, you're stupid.
Focus up. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's just like we didn't have any technology for depression. So if you were just, what do they call that? Melancholy. You know
Yeah.
what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
So,
I think now it's called PhD. Back then it's called shell shock.
Yeah. And the solution for that is to rub dirt in it and suck it up. You're ashamed of your nation or whatever. You know what I mean? So people growing up with that unsupportive environment then propagate unsupportive environments. If they succeed, if they pass on, they're like, well, you need to grow through struggle like I did, and that propagates.
And that generation, their parents with depression and stuff, so.
Yeah, and then you use a little bit of this stuff to cure your depression as well, and then that leads to.
I mean, if you pour dirt and bourbon in your shit, you're good to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how does a founder impress you?
Yeah. Oh, how does a founder impress me? This is a good one. I think showing speed is the main thing. So it's like if they're running through the problem space at a certain clip, then I have a lot more confidence in them. I think the other aspect of it is like caring about adding value, like what their customers actually think. If they're just, out there to do something because they want to do it or it hasn't been done or whatever, then that's like not so impressive because, anybody can do anything if they commit their time to it with the technology that we have these days. But it's like, people that are authentically looking to deliver value to other people, in specific market segments. And then the information they can tell me about their customer. Like if you know your customer like the back of your hand, then I believe you can sell to that customer. And if there are enough of that customers, then you've got a business that I will invest in. There's a adage that's like, I forget who said this, but as an investor it said, I want to invest in companies that make a product that people want to buy a lot of as fast as possible. And it's like, yeah. So people that are checking those boxes and really intentional about checking those boxes are impressive to me. And then the last one, which is something that I got from Charles Hudson from Precursor Ventures, which I think is a great litmus test, especially in early stage venture building, is if it's profound, your solution, if it's true. So the first company that we invested in was Doppel Technologies. It's a telerobotic ultrasound company. They just got through their first 7 clinical trials. So you've got a remote operator sitting in their basement in Spokane, Washington, and you've got a robot, like one of these mic stands but with actuators at each of the joints, that is holding an ultrasound probe, giving haptic feedback about the pressures that it's detecting to the operator's ultrasound wand, and probing a patient's body, their heart, their abdomen, their womb, whatever it's going to be for all the different things you need an ultrasound for. And the impact of a technology like this, where you can have, a universal robotic arm that sets you back 15K in the remote villages of Cameroon, while an operator is set in Sweden, let's say, right? The ability to improve human lives through, fixing kidney stones, ultrasound guided procedures, or delivering babies, right? It's like, that's profound. You can talk about doing remote operations in a first world country where even today, like imaging specialists have to drive, 2 hours to this clinic, this rural clinic, 2 hours to that, right? If they could sit in their house in metropolitan New York and deliver, 7 babies in the time that it would take, them to normally deliver 1, that's profound. And so like those sorts of companies really matter to me. And if you're working on a problem like that, those are things.
So let's suppose there's a founder and like everything lines up, like everything's perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's lined up. But what would be the red flag that would have to cause you not to invest, right? Like everything's perfect, you want to invest, and then something pops up like, okay, this red flag, like I can't invest in you no more. What would be the red flag that makes you like, okay, no?
I think the main red flag is just like how they encounter problems. I think the hallmark of a good entrepreneur is that they will figure a way to break through a wall. Like they'll try a million things to do it. They might have to take a sabbatical to like get enough funds to go back at it or whatever, but that's the thing that they're constantly on. And so if someone's like, oh, well, we tried to do this, but we just couldn't do it, and it's just like, well, what information did you gather in this process to make your next attempt that much more successful? Like, or, I mean, there's things around a pivot, like I like people that hold strong ideas loosely or strong opinions loosely. If people are like uncoachable, then I think that's another thing. If you can't give them new information to try to solve the problem, that's another thing. So it's like people that lack grit, that I think is like a fundamental thing if you're trying to do anything innovative. And then people that, you know, are, what am I trying to say here? Not iterating in a way that makes sense. Those are the
So I think there's two schools of thought. One school of thought is like fail fast. Like if you don't have MVP and like $100 million in 90 days, quit. Other school of thought is like never quit. Keep on going no matter what. To me, like each one is like kind of fucked up, right? So what do you in your mind like the perfect combination, like fast and like never quit, right?
What's the last one? Fast
or never quit?
Or never quit. I think it all comes from testing business ideas, testing the market. So it's like you can go longer if you're doing customer discovery. Like as long as you're really getting to where the hair on fire problem is, like as long as you're inventing like a painkiller and not a vitamin, then if you're testing business ideas in a cheap way, you're not like building systems.
Well, what if the people don't know it's a pain thing?
Oh, you mean like if it's a game or something like that, where it's like, yeah, I think the thing is like the never quit thing.
I mean, hopefully someone's not doing the stuff for 35 years, right?
Yeah, the thing is you can fail, right, and not quit, but you can't fail in an undignified way, meaning that you can't fail the same way.
Yeah.
Times. So if you're failing and you learn new information that informs a new attempt, that's good. If you're just failing and not learning anything new each time, then that is where I start to ask a lot of questions. So, I mean, I'll ask questions in general to be like, what did we learn from this experience? But it's like, if you just keep trying the same thing and you can't quite see why, and then you're not listening to your coach, then it's just like, okay, well, this person's just in a loop. And you can't, break them out. And at this point, like, to the point of when you tell someone to give up, like, this is where I ask them a lot of questions, because I find that in general, like, if you tell someone something, then they have to take the contrarian.
I mean, a lot of people are startup. What's the word? Wannabe entrepreneurs? I can't think of it.
Entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are that. I think that, and they may become that. I think that, like, there's character development in life. And if anybody wants to learn about character development as a philosophical exercise, there's an excellent anime called Land of the Lustrous, which talks about the character journey of a character who starts off as like the most useless of an anthropomorphic gym society. This is where we get weird with Japanese anime. But then they learn that they can adapt their physiology by absorbing other kind of weaker materials to become a stronger whole. And so initially they're just happy-go-lucky, they haven't incurred trial, they get confronted with the enemy, and then they have to evolve. And so I think that people can evolve, and I think that that journey can take a lot of forms. So I think that people should go that journey to toughen them up, even if it's to inform an alternate pursuit. I think people should go out there and get their butt kicked a little bit, and they'll learn something, even if they do ultimately quit.
No, I think it's one thing wrong with the generation. I think there's like value to getting your fucking face punched in with someone, right?
Yep.
There's a lesson we learn, like getting your ass kicked, getting beat up, getting that kind of stuff.
Yep, someone swoops in, steals your company, your board hates you and conspires against you. All these sorts of things teach you different lessons. They're best if you can learn these lessons through someone else's example. This is why people who read in society have such a great advantage against people that don't. If you can learn through someone else's example, this is great. So study your Harvard business cases, Harvard Business Review cases. But yeah, you encountering the life in that way and the market in that way is important.
So next, let's switch to like tech stats, right? So I'm a firm believer. I got involved in tech startups maybe 2014. In my opinion, nothing's really improved, right? There's always the various officers, all this kind of stuff performative, but nothing really improved, right? So some kind of stats, and I put this for ChatGPT for whatever. Take that for what it's worth, right? Black tech workers 3 to 5%, modest gains, like. Stuff has improved, like sort of, kind of, but like.
Well, even then, accounting, right? The way these numbers they might have just changed categories or the definition of categories.
Yeah.
Hard to get the most introspective look, but.
So one thing I want to look at is like the actual tech startups, right? If I can pull it up here.
Yeah. Let's get there.
So Black Latinx founders, 2024, not only on 90% of the early stage startups. Female founders, 2%, like you said earlier. Black and Latino women even worse, And these stats has pretty much have stayed the same for the longest time, right? Yeah. So like, it's like people are doing like the stuff, they're making improvements, right? But like nothing's changing. Like I think to me the first story is right. I think a while ago, I think I'll make this up, of course. Like I think the diversity person from Apple was at Apple, and stats actually like that got worse, and they got a better job at Google, right? And of course, there's a white guy, right? I don't know. It just like seems the stats are not improving, right?
Yeah. They're gonna get better naturally though, because the way you can predict this is through.
But it's like 10 years though, right?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing about 10 years or 20 years in the future is that...
I mean, it's not a long time, of course, but man...
It's disappointing. I know, in our lifetime to see the gains would be great, and we will. But I think the thing is the run rate of the universities is the largest predictor in this. And that might change with the way the AI is coming.
Like this one I hear, female founder of femtech companies raise 20% less.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know the stats, right?
Yeah.
Is there a way, like... I mean, people like you're trying to improve, like, what can like we do to improve it? But is this like this the way it is, right?
I don't think so. I think the biggest access problem in all of this is access to capital to develop a minimum viable product. And thank you to AI, I think it's breaking down that barrier. People are doing seed strapping now, which is we raise once, and then that's all we need is to develop the MVP or to do marketing. It's to do marketing. So you use generative AI to develop your product, and then you get your growth capital to do marketing, and then you're done. And sometimes you don't even return to investors, depending on how ethical you are. But so I think that is what is the great equalizer. So thank you to all the people that are out there contriving to develop models that to enfranchise the rich people too much, because I think you've accidentally broken down these barriers. And I say that because if you look at domain name registrations on the internet, 25% of all new domain registrations are for African Americans.
Okay.
So we're starting businesses, but the scale of our businesses is...
Well, what type of business though?
Well, usually consumer packaged goods businesses, because they're closer to lived experience and you don't need a degree to do them necessarily. You can sell something that the market needs if it's a physical thing, as long as you can produce it. There will always be someone that needs it and will buy it. If it's something more abstract, like a technology, like a bigger thing, then you have to go market it to people. Like if the cost of customer acquisition is too high, then someone with low initial capital supply won't ever cross that barrier. So it's like, I think that because AGI is making it easier than, just like cloud made it easier to start a company, those barrier to entries are dropping faster. And so people with authentic knowledge of customer problems are going to gain the advantage. And I think that like Black people, there's like just pent up, demand for market stuff in terms of venture. When people know that this is something that can happen, like growing a scalable business this way, and they have access to those technologies, when like everybody's using Perplexity or ChatGPT or DeepSeek, whatever the thing is, these agentic things, whenever, like as long as that consciousness is being propagated out into underrepresented communities, we'll see the true meritocracy start to take place. It won't be a function of what generational wealth exists to provide people with risk-taking opportunities or different things like this.
Do you think people using AI is taking away our what's I'm looking for? Not our smartness, like our I think I'm looking for. It is like taking over like our ability like solve problems or think better. Like a lot of people like oh, let me put in ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And they just use it and copy and paste.
I think it's a phase we're going through where it's like, oh, I don't want to think too deeply about this. But then I think another phase that we're going to go through, because I think at the end of it, like we're story-driven beings. And the reason why I think a lot of people didn't learn calculus and a lot of people thought math wasn't for them and a lot of people don't consider themselves innovators is because the stories around those didn't resonate with them, or they weren't told the stories. Mm-hmm. They weren't told the stories of why Italian mathematicians were competitively solving quadratic equations or coming up with solves for polynomials and things like that in order to get professorships and things like that. Like if we're told those kind of stories, which we're just not, I don't know, it's because it's a function of time or whatever, those are the sorts of things that implant knowledge and inspire curiosity. And so I think like AI will take away like a lot of the grind, but I think that people always want to know the story for why that grind existed in the first place, or how did we arrive at the structure that we do.
What's the problem that you want to solve?
Yeah, the main problem I want to solve is this racial wealth gap. I think that, and then I think I think that will solve the larger problem, which is the inequitable distribution of like decision making in the world. So he with the gold makes the rules, but gold is not well distributed, and so you get some of the people that are worst for society making some of the most impactful decisions. And so I think that if I could solve any one thing, or encapsulate what I want to solve the most, it would be making sure that the people that were the most that loved humanity the most were able to make the most impactful decisions.
So with your VC fund, how do you succeed?
Yeah, how I succeed is by getting capital to people that can return the capital. So LPs won't invest in my fund if my fund doesn't get returns, and the only way my fund gets returns is if I find founders that are going to make a difference in the world and help them close their rounds and meet their milestones.
And see, I already answered my next question, but like, how do you fail?
How I fail is by being unaccountable to my LPs and by spending too much time on the mountaintop, like thinking about customer, discovery that my founders should be figuring out for themselves. Like I have this part of my nature that wants to solve problems, and so I have to be careful to restrict myself to the problem that I'm solving right in front of me, which is making sure my capital allocation decisions are going to people that are closest to the work and have the best information.
And so I think usually like a founder like gets investment for like a VC fund, they get like founder updates once a month or whatever.
Yeah.
You have to do the same thing with your people, like give them like updates.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's technology nowadays to update this. So you like send questionnaires to your founders and things like that.
Okay.
So you can track KPIs like revenue growth, employee headcount, ads. If you've got a thing, like for example, the telerobotic ultrasound company will have like scans done on different aspects of anatomy, robots put in rural hospitals, different things like this.
So how do you deal with it? Like suppose you invest in a founder, you're really hiring them, but whatever, something happens, like you lose faith in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just cut them off, or like you try to coach them up. Like how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I would coach them, and if they're not coachable, then it's just what it is. You know what I mean? Like if you can't tell someone how to not fail the same way repeatedly, then they just have to encounter that. And I feel like the best way is just to ask questions and have difficult conversations. And I think the best way to have these difficult conversations is to just get at the what's in it for me, for the founder, right? So like, what are you trying to do? Oh, you need this money for your personal circumstance, right? So it's like, okay, let's help you find a better way to get this money for your personal.
So I don't think it's ever happened, but like, what prevents, like I make this up, like suppose you invest $10 million in me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like, man, I'm going to fucking Asia and just fucking disappear, right?
Yeah.
Like how come more, I mean, of course it's unethical, right?
Right.
I don't think anyone's ever done that, right?
Oh, people have done that.
Oh, have they? Okay. I didn't know that.
Not to me personally.
But what prevents people doing that? What, is there like a law or like something like says like, like, I always wonder like, okay, you invest a amount of money, like, okay, I'm gonna fucking like roll off to fucking Asia or fucking Europe, disappear. Like, what keeps people from doing that, right? Besides being unethical.
Yeah. What do you? Is the question on the founder side? What keeps people from just what?
Either way, yeah.
There's no real thing. So I mean, the main thing is if you
like, you're not gonna go to jail, nothing like that, right? Or
yeah, if you leave to a country that doesn't have like extradition policy with the U.S., then you pretty much got out of the thing. People do this all the time. Like you typically will see like, and not to besmirch the profession, but people in like accounting positions or something like that get trusted with large sums of money. They'll disappear to some like unaccountable like state entity, and you'll never.
Or even like you invest $10 million in me, and I fucking like, okay, I'm just fucking like plucking below, right?
Yeah. We say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So through due diligence, I have to learn what your values are, what your mission is, how well aligned you are with your mission. And if I can't tell that you're obsessed with the problem that you're solving, that even if you went to Ecuador or whatever, that you would still be working on the problem that I've invested in you solving, right?
I think that's a lot of founders will get, right? They don't understand, like, these people, they invest like potential millions of dollars in you, right?
Right.
They gotta fucking like really like believe in you, right? It can't be, I have this fucking, I'm gonna make some new fish sauce or some bullshit, right? They have to like fucking believe like this is like, it has to be a life's work, right? You have to like really believe, right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's not the idea, it's the execution that matters. Like, idea is just a multiplier on execution. So if you have a bad idea and you're great at it, you know what I mean, you'll make some money. If you have a good idea and you're great at it, you're gonna make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you're just an idea guy, right, and you're not able to actually win anybody to execute that's like competent in execution, or you haven't demonstrated your ability to run a team of high executing people, then you're just someone that I coach in that regard. I'll be like, hey, look, you have to prove yourself in these ways. And they're like, oh, how can I prove myself without capital? I'll be like, okay, look, well, you got to get ingenuitive, right?
You got to grind some kind of. You got to do something free. There's plenty of ways, right? Like the Airbnb people, they sell like the Obamacare, right?
Right.
There's plenty of ways to figure out. Like maybe don't do this. It's like maybe like you go fucking sell plasma.
Yeah. I mean,
I saw $100,000 for plasma, and so or maybe like, hey, I went to fucking Alaska and worked on a fucking boat for 6 months.
Yeah, but that's I think the thing for me is, if you would sell plasma to solve the thing you want to solve, that to me is an investment decision right there. It's like, how dedicated you are finding the answer for the problem that you want to solve. And so it's like, God, what was it? There was a movie about this where it's like Will Smith is selling like bone scanners or whatever, and it's the story of a real person who becomes a successful hedge fund manager.
Was that the one with the son was in it?
Yeah,
he was like homeless for a while. Yeah, I know the movie. I can't think of the name either.
And that's the thing, is like, to what extent will you go? Like, how much does this problem live with you? Because if I invest in someone where that problem like goes to bed with them at night, they're probably going to solve that problem one way or another. But if I invest that money in someone that's just like, oh yeah, how cool is this idea? You know what I mean?
I can imagine, like, suppose you invested like $1 million to someone, and they failed, and they told you, hey Evan, I failed, but I learned a lot. You're like, motherfucker.
Honestly, I'd be like, well, what did you learn? You know what I mean? And it's just like, okay.
Like I learned nothing for you, but that's for me, right?
Yeah,
that's better for you.
Yeah, if it doesn't benefit me, then that's why I have a portfolio of diverse investments, and that's why I carefully screened you to see if you were someone that would be like not understanding the mutual.
So what's your goal? Like, you have a goal, like a certain number of investments per year?
Yeah. So from our first fund, we're targeting 24 investments per year.
And like, how much per fund?
Sorry,
like,
12 investors.
Like how much per investment?
Like 100 to 200K per investment. So that's just a pre-seed stage fund.
People don't realize, like, a lot of like startups, they don't need $10 million, right?
Yeah.
They need just enough, like, prove product market fit, like build a product, build MVP right, do the testing right.
And if I coach my babies right, then they're going to go out there and do the customer discovery that they need to do with my money. And I'm going to introduce them to first customers for their MVP that are going to tell them what they actually need to build.
Why do you think so many founders fucking suck at customer discovery?
I think because they watched Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner screwed us all.
Yeah.
I loved Waterworld. I was one of 5 people, I guess. But the Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come, lives deep within the consciousness. I think
especially it's like tech founders, right? Like, people build products, right?
Yeah. But, this is like evolutionary theory, but it's fine too. I mean, like, ultimately there's some number of people that need to make wild guesses just based off personal experience for like things to move forward. I think the best thing you can do is customer discovery, and if you're going to do a Field of Dreams, if we build it, they will come thing, then please still do customer discovery so that you can actually know how to build a better product. Because the thing is, if you don't do customer discovery, and if you just go out there and build something, and now you want to get mad because your customers aren't using it the right way or whatever, and in engineering you're always taught, like, never underestimate the way that your customers will fail to use your product in the right way. And so it's like, that's on you. There's like a book called The Design of Everyday Things, and it's like, design the cartridge so it only fits one way, right? And so if you haven't done that, then that's a failure of you as an engineer. And so it's like, figure out how your customers want you to build it that one way. If you do that, you'll make everybody a whole lot of money.
That's a good point. I think a lot of like tech people, they like don't take consideration how important design is.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. A lot of people, I think, overestimate the abilities from their specific domain. So like, people be like, oh, I'm a back-end systems engineer. Sure, I could do UX design. It's like, well, hold on now, buddy.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, let's critically reevaluate.
Yeah, let's take it back.
You don't think people spend their whole lives studying this field because maybe there's something you might not know? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So letting people, having people be humble about that, and like, I think is important as well.
Has there ever been a time where like somebody pitched you and you're like, man, I want to invest in you, but man, I want to invest in your idea, but only it was someone else pitching me because you fucking suck.
Ooh.
Of course, don't say names, of course, not like that, of course.
No. Jerry, I just want to let you know. I'm just kidding. Who was it that was... No, honestly, the only moment I ever experienced this heartbreak was when I was coming back to my alma mater to do interviews for freshmen engineers.
Mm.
It was like, because I had counseled this young man specifically in how they should like put their coursework together.
Mm.
And then when I encountered him, so I'll tell you the whole story. So I advised this person in terms of like what they should do with the engineering program at my school, because there'd just been a shuffle in who the engineering chair was, and the next person was not specifically great for computer engineering, and that's what this young man wanted to do. So I was like, so what you got to do is take like a major in computer engineering and minor in electrical engineering. This is what you have to do if you want to get your full computer engineering experience. And so he did that, and then he was in the group of people that I was going to interview for a freshman position when I was working at Fluke. And I gave him the problems. So we had just 3 engineering problems to solve that were like calibrated to his level of experience. And he pushed it back at me, and he was like, I'm more of like a kind of a businessy guy. And I was like, well, that's a weird thing to say for a guy that just went through like the engineering programs, as that I had just specifically told you to do not 4 years ago, right? So 3 years, I think it was. And it was just like, that sucked, because I had told this person specifically what to do, coached him, right? And he said, yes, I understand, Mr. Poncelet. And then went and like did not become the sort of person that takes on challenges. And it's just like, even if you were in business, I would expect a business person to attempt these things, having given their schooling thing. Even if you were not going to do any implementation work or something like this, if you were going to just do a project management sort of thing, I would expect you to attempt the thing that you weren't comfortable with. And so on those grounds, I had to dismiss that guy. And that was the worst of any of these sort of experiences. But I've never had one where it's like a founder comes and it's just like, cool problem, wrong team.
So how about this, right? So obviously there's a lot of like black VCs out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are a few, right? There's you, there's Mark Monroe, Charles Precursor, there's I think it's Harlem Venture Fund.
Yep, Frederick Gross from Wellington.
I mean, there's a few out there, right? So what's your, let's suppose there's out there a black founder like, oh, I can't find any black investor, right?
Yeah.
What would you tell this person? You're like, hey, dude, like you need to do better research. That we're out here. Like, what do you tell this person?
Yeah, I'd say, well, one, what is your sector? Because a lot of people think, oh, just a VC is a VC is a VC. It's like, no. I mean, we have our theses, and we have to invest within our theses. One, because we tell our LPs that that's what we're going to do. And the best way to stay a VC is to tell your LPs what you're going to do, and then do that thing and not some other thing. And so, if they're, an environmental or clean tech company, and they're going to talk to, I don't know, a VC that invests specifically in SaaS or
like me, I'm B2B. I'd be fucking retarded. I'm B2B pre-C. I'd be fucking retarded to go fucking consumer B round.
Yeah, you're just wasting everybody's time, and it's like, so telling them to be more focused, tell them to come up with a list of people that are in their sector, and then to also track like their funnel.
Because most VCs do a really good job of like on the internet, like I do this right.
Yeah, but
I mean majority of them.
But still, you see founders that like shotgun approach, just like they'll talk to anybody that'll talk to them, And a lot of VCs are just like want to hear you out, especially like black VCs to black founder. It's like I want to hear what this guy has to say.
Yeah, like you're not my vertical, but yeah, I want to,
Right, and I'll maybe
I can make a connection or something.
Exactly. So I mean, in that situation, I think that's what I'd tell that guy is just like, what's your sector? What's your list of VCs? Who have you talked to? And then they're like, oh, well, this is why you need.
So how does a founder reach out to you? I've been asked this before, so I apologize I did. But how does a founder reach out to you? Like, you say cold call, emails, then you go to networking event. Like, how does someone like?
Yeah, typically it's LinkedIn. Like people refer people to me. We have a website, dreamward.vc. There's a Airtable form.
Like, how do they get in front of you? Like, I'm sure you have to get that. You probably get 100 emails a day, whatever. Like, how does someone? Okay. You got 100 emails, 100 contacts today. I want to be the one that gets in front of you today.
Yeah. Typically, it's just through email communication,
okay.
And then it's like if your pitch deck has like some aspect of it that's really interesting to me, I'll give you a talk. And I try to generally give 30-minute conversations to a lot of people, provided that they're like within my.
Is there something like for me, like now it's like if I'm hiring for a job, right? I'm a military veteran. And people know this when I was in college, I was president of the university, right? So if somebody has a resume as a military vet or some kind of student government, I put it on the top, right? Is there something like that for you? Like, okay, this guy has this on the pitch deck, like maybe I'm from Tacoma or maybe Gonzaga. Like, what can they like put in their pitch deck like will catch your attention?
It's really that profound if true thing, because it's like if you're developing another thing like that is I've seen a bunch of before or something like that, that's not super interesting to me. And I'll still probably like talk to you just to be like, oh, you know, do you know that your competitive landscape looks like this, you know? Just to see if I can put them in a more productive direction or something like this. But the people that get a lot more time investment from me are people that are like well prepared for whatever they're doing. And if they're missing like critical certain information, like they're really good in one dimension, I think that's the most attractive thing. If you're really good in one dimension, you've got a really strong 1-inch punch, but the thing that I notice you're missing is just like, you know, some one other dimension that you're really deficient in. You're like perhaps blind to this. Like we'll talk for like a day on getting you fixed in that dimension.
Cause I mean, make it like suppose they have like go to market like down pat,
right?
But the fucking financials fucking suck.
Yeah. So if you're going to a bad market, that's not going to work for you. Or if you don't have like sales, like we'll just talk about sales. Or we'll be like, oh, here's a sales coach for you. Or have we talked about how you're building out your sales funnel? Or do you have like a content strategy or certain things like this? So like, but if you're really strong in something else, like you were saying, then it's just like, oh, well, we just fix this part of the engine that's broken and then we can all move forward together.
So what's how am I question? Of all the stuff you're doing right now, what are you most proud of?
Ooh, I think I'm most proud of the founders who did not raise capital from me successfully, who still refer me to their connections, and we're thankful for the experience.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because I think, you know, they really found value in what I was saying to them, and it wasn't transactional, right? So it's like the benefit is really one-sided, right? There was the presumption of benefit initially, but ultimately didn't work out. And then I think like the other thing that I'm really proud of is like being able to give back to the next generation. So there's a young man who was working in tech, and so he was really interested in virtual reality, which fell out of favor with the metaverse stuff and then the AI boom. And but he's wants to work in this field, and he's developed a lot of expertise in it. And so we met through youth workforce development through the William Gross Center for Cultural Innovation and Enterprise, which is like the building I did all the network infrastructure for and all this stuff, and led programs for initially. And so he just wanted to come in. He had solved a VR challenge that the Boys and Girls Club had issued to him, and I think there was like maybe like $5,000 or $7,000 attached to that. And so, he saw the economic benefit of pursuing his passion, and was going to go work out specifically just like at some enterprise, like he'd gone through university and was successful. He became a part of this self-organized youth teaching syndicate at the University of Washington called Avela. Shout out to Kyle Johnson and the folks that are running it through that. I think it's Samira right now. And Vincente, I want to say as well, because the people are doing amazing work. But so he went and became the VR lead for their group, and then through coming to our Black Founder and Funders meeting, decided that he was going to work for a startup or start his own startup. And so working for a startup to learn how they operate. And so now he's successfully become like a leader in a startup that's delivering a training to combat medics, people that are working in warfighting or battle scenarios. And it's just really amazing. He's a person they lean on quite a bit and has a significant equity stake in the company. And I think he's going to do really well. They've raised capital successfully. And this is all on the pathway to him running his own shop. And so I think for me, that's it, is the full cycle. If I can get that person to become an investor at the end of it and invest in our community and people that need that same shot, or even to give that same information in public, to talk, give talks at all the different conferences and different things like that, then that, like a bunch of those individuals are going to really make the difference. So me, if my success is judged by how many people I get to become me after this, or while I'm doing this. And so it has to be exponential in that way. It can't be additive.
So let's suppose the front of there, right? They pitch you like 4 other different VCs, right? Plus you and the 4 other VCs, like suppose 5 VCs including you all want to invest $200,000 in this person, right? Mm-hmm. Why should this founder pick you over the other 4 people?
Well, I think one, because it's like we're patient capital, so we intend to be the first checks. We're not looking to control them or direct how they do their business. We're definitely going to ask them questions if we find things that look efficient or certain things like this. But if we invested in them, it's because we trusted them to figure things out, and we're going to let them pursue that with our best advising. I think the other aspect is because if we succeed as investors, then that makes a big difference in terms of our ability to generate additional venture capitalists from Black diaspora, as well as angel investors. So it's building the institutional capital infrastructure by allowing us to succeed in their rocket ship that's going to a profitable future. So I think that they see the value in that in terms of regenerative capital source for people that are like them. So we're building the thing that many people say they wish they had when they were founding companies. So people that are coming up see that in action, and they're like, I want this to exist for the next person, and I'm glad that it exists for me. And so if I definitely want this to exist for the next person, then I will take allocation from them and succeed.
Is there a founder you want to invest in, but you went somewhere else?
Well, no, we still need to get a bigger fund, I think, to be able to invest in all the people. So it's not been like, we're going to go with someone else. We've been, everybody, we've gotten like the A-list of A-list people like coming to us. We got people that are developing.
And all your investment in the Seattle area or across the nation?
Across the nation.
Okay.
Across the nation. We've got people that are doing cell therapies for diabetes that have like potentially curative, that have like proven it in animal models. We've got people that have developed, that have been like PhDs from Carnegie Mellon that have.
Has someone pitch you an idea that you're like, oh shit, I never thought about this? Like
all the time. No, the worst one as an engineer is I was thinking about doing this, but now I'm confronted with someone who has done it excellently, and I just have to be thankful that I didn't compete with them. And so it's just like, because one thing that bothered me was being in recruiting for the engineering program that I was a part of at Fluke was how inefficient like the college application process was, and then like the feedback loop of what industry wants versus what the universities are going to teach. And then like connecting people at these career fairs where you shove an application at somebody and maybe they read it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I was like, this is sloppy. And then I came across this company Circled In, CRKLED in, and it was like LinkedIn for kids. And it's like this universal application to your universities, to your internships, to your scholarships, right? And it's student focused, and then all the rings are around them. And it's just like, oh yes. You know what I mean? It's like, finally, and because kids are out there putting themselves out on social media, acting a fool, they don't have a professional presence, and then when they go on LinkedIn, they look like a kid in their dad's suit or their mom's heels. You know what I mean? It doesn't fit them, and so you need something that professionally showcases young people that are growing in society. And so that was a beautiful thing, and I had thought to build it, but then they built it excellently, and I was like, wow, God, what else did I see that I loved that I was thinking about building? Oh, I don't know. There's so many things.
So how do you make yourself a better person every day?
I think, if I was in that market, I think for me, the way I do it is just like by making sure that I maximize my impact on a daily basis. But what I'm learning more is to like direct some of my impact towards myself. Like I will do a lot of self-sacrifice to make sure like the problems that I'm interested in solving get solved. But it comes at the expense of like my health and different things like that, and that's not too tenable. So what I do to get better every day is like mow through as much of my to-do list as possible. But what I'm learning to do better is put more like physical health kind of things on my to-do list to make sure that I'm, getting better as a person and supporting my longevity.
Is there a skill you don't have that you wish you have or you want to kind of learn?
So many. So one, I want to get better at music. So I would love to just learn more about music theory and like get really good at like playing keyboard. The other thing that I would really like to do is learn French. So I have family.
I mean, your last name is French, right?
This bit, but I have family in France too.
So it's crazy. Like, so I'm Italian, right?
Yeah.
In the Army, I was actually stationed in Tennessee for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Never figured that right.
Worst.
So people would say like, "Hey, are you gonna learn like whatever language?" Like, dude, I was at my home country for 2 years. If I didn't learn Italian, the chance of me learning your language is like fucking 0 to none.
Right. Yeah. I think I would do it if I moved to France, like, because I find that whenever I go back to France, like I'm picking up more of the vocabulary. Like I can hear French, but I can't speak it too well. I'm getting better. But then the thing is, it's funny. It's because it's my dad's side of the family. My uncle Randy moved out to France in 1974 and started a family out there, and so like I get to hang out with them and do tourism stuff with them. But like the other thing is like a lot of African nations speak French, and so I feel like I'd be more effective. Like
I think Senegal speaks French.
Yeah, Senegal speaks French.
The French has a big colony stuff there.
Yeah, Cote d'Ivoire speaks French, and I think a few of the others in that corner speak French.
Haiti, they spoke French.
Haiti speaks French, right? So it's like a big part of the Black diaspora, just because like the colonial.
Like French, they colonized Vietnam back in their day.
Yeah, as well. Some of the older generation.
That when I was in Vietnam, that kind of threw me off. I knew it, but I kind of threw me off. I saw the big French influence.
Yeah.
They speak. They still have. They call banh mi as baked as a baguette.
Yeah, it's interesting. But that's what I love is like Vietnamese food, right? I mean, you get the.
And so that dude, Pasteur.
Louis Pasteur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's like buildings for him in Vietnam. There's a Pasteur school.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably said this up. There's a Pasteur Street in Ho Chi Minh City.
Wow.
It's like hookers, prostitutes, like strip clubs, but it's called Pasteur Street.
Yeah, that's sad to see, isn't it? Where it's just like, but I think at the
But
same
the French
time,
influence is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. By the way, my family name is on the Eiffel Tower. So
Oh, nice.
Jean-Victor Poncelet was
Okay.
a French mathematician that also was a physicist. He formed like a unit of energy before Watt got out there. So
Nice. So you said you're 40 right now, right?
Yep.
So let's say you're 15 years old again. 15 years old. No, let's say you're 20, right?
Yeah.
Will your 20 year self be like, okay, you're doing a good job, you're advancing in life, or like you're far behind? Like, what are you doing with your life? What do your 20 year self would say about you right now?
I think what I would do is I would say get started in entrepreneurship or the venture economy sooner. Like my biggest regret is I was going to college to get a job as opposed to start a company. And so I was going through it. I'm contemporary with Mark Zuckerberg. He's been getting in better shape lately. So, but we're similar in age. I think he's just maybe a few months older than me. And so when he was going through, of course, he had the advantage of going to a really fancy high school, preparatory high school, all this kind of stuff. And then, going to Harvard and all this kind of stuff. So it's like, if I had better knowledge of how the world worked, that would be the move. I would have used every capstone in a class to like advance my database, my back end, or whatever the situation was, or any Java class I would take to do front end stuff. If I had that consciousness, that is what I would have done differently. And if I could have told my younger self that.
Yeah, so I determined for the Army. I'm proud of my career. Gave my wife, my family a good standard of living. Right, did a lot of traveling, but I had it over again. I probably would do 7 years. Got involved in tech way earlier, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many opportunities, right?
Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, being able to like travel the world is like fun. Like, because when you get older, it gets harder, right? And then if you want to do it,
yeah, that's the time people always say, "I'm gonna travel when I retire." Motherfucker, you be 65 years old, your body be fucking broke as fuck.
Those cobblestones are gonna kick your butt.
Yeah, they don't understand, right? I try to do as much travel as I can now before my body totally breaks down. So, Evan, is there anything else to ask you that I didn't, or anything else you want to talk about?
Anything? No, I just want to, maybe give some shout outs.
Yeah.
Really proud of Africatown Community Land Trust and the work they've done. I was at Africatown Plaza the other day for my uncle's 79th birthday I was talking about. And so, just that's amazing, the work that a few determined individuals can do in terms of building a team and really do an amazing economic impact. Shout out to Avela, a vision for electronic literacy and access, the self-assembled student teaching group out of the University of Washington, and shout out to everybody that supported their vision and helped them build out. They're such an amazing community resource. Shout out to Mark Monroe from the Culture Startup Studio, and then the Come Up Series podcast. They're going to do the amazing Tech Innovation and Wealth Summit in September that I mentioned from the 18th, I think, to the 21st. Who else deserves a shout out? Shout out to Stephen Green from Pitch Black in Oregon for doing such amazing business development infrastructure building out there as the board chair of Built Oregon, making it happen for CPG businesses with underrepresented founders, all the Black Latino folks out there making it happen for real. And shout out to the Tech Industry Alliance with Laura Rudderman's group helping move our ecosystem forward and getting access to capital through their really innovative corporate venture capital programs. And this big upcoming investment summit they're going to have coming up in July. And last shout out is to some of my favorite people out there doing it, the Washington State Technology Industry Association and C-City doing it in terms of representation in the tech industry. And then also, just getting tech and corporate folks into the entrepreneurial economy and breaking those golden handcuffs, which are such a prison for all the intellectual property that all of us should be entitled to owning more of. To that point, we're going to have a Tech Accelerate event this weekend as a stepping stone to the second quarter venture conference we're doing for Venture Black. So Tech Accelerate is going to be a bridge program series that we're kicking off on the 10th. It's going to be at the Surf Incubator from I think it's 10:30 to 1:30, or said 10:30 to 1:30, at 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. To talk about bridging the gap from corporate into entrepreneurship. And so we're going to be talking about the startup mindset and then the investor mindset.
So how can people reach out to you on social media?
Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, Evan Poncelet. It's me, black guy in a wheelchair, and a Canadian white dude, so you should be able to tell the difference between the two of us. And then also you can hit me up at evan@dreamward.vc. Also, please come out to any of our events for Venture Black that we're doing, or the events that we sponsor. We have a BIPOC leadership lunch that's going to be the train up from Portland if you're down in Portland to come up to Seattle for a tech week.
And so finally, can you give us any last word of advice on wisdom or anything you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah, okay, I'll say this one, and so we'll leave this as something for everybody to process. The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken.
That's so fucking deep. Say that one more time for the people in the back.
I said the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken.
Damn. Evan, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you as well.
Thank you for your time today. As a reminder, we're sponsored by Breeze. Requests for proposals, aka RFPs, can be very challenging for small and medium-sized business. Breeze Docs, the RFP response platform, a choice for small business across North America. Be sure to check out the QR code on the platform. Thank you for your time today. Remember to be great every day. Okay, finish.